Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the dusty, dangerous and velvet-draped world of the Old West red light districts. Yep, brothels. Picture this. It's 1874. The saloon across the street is already spilling noise and broken glass into the dirt road, and you, yes you, are the newest working girl in a mining boomtown called Whiskey Gulch. The men here? Mostly armed, some drunk. A few haven't seen a woman in 6 months, and at least 2 of them might be on the run from something or someone they won't talk about. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city and the time in the comments. Are you one of those late night souls like me? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step off the stagecoach with a suitcase that's more hope than belongings. Your shoes are second hand, the kind of leather that peels at the toes, and the smell of horses is so thick you're not sure where your skin ends and the dust begins. The gentleman who gave you directions is wearing a bowler hat 2 sizes too big and hasn't stopped chewing on a matchstick. Third door past the saloon, he tells you, before winking like he knows something you don't. You find it, the parlour. It's got chipped red paint on the shutters and a name carved into the wood above the swinging doors. Miss Claudine's House of Refinement. You step inside and everything changes. It's like entering another dimension. The air smells like perfume and whiskey. There's velvet wallpaper, faded but proud, and a chandelier that probably arrived in a crate labelled fragile, but hasn't seen a proper cleaning since Lincoln was president. The women inside are lounging in corsets and petticoats, draped across couches like cats in a sunbeam, watching you with a mix of curiosity and judgment. One of them, a redhead with more rings than fingers, raises a single eyebrow. "New meat," she mutters. You swallow. Miss Claudine appears like a ghost conjured from lace. She's in her 40s, face powdered like an aristocrat, and carrying a thin cane she doesn't need to walk. It's for emphasis, and probably discipline. "What's your name, sweetheart?" she asks, already flipping through a mental Rolodex of what you might sell for. You tell her your real name. Big mistake. No, she says, waving her hand. You're Maisie Rose now. That's delicate but feisty. Miners love that. Within 10 minutes, you've got a new name, a new room, and a new job that's about to test every nerve you have. The room isn't bad. It has a mirror, a basin, and a window that doesn't lock. The bed creaks if you breathe near it, but it's yours. Kind of. Rent comes out of your pay, and everything you use, rouge, perfume, even the candles, is charged to your tab. If you're smart, you learn how to make your own face powder from cornstarch and chalk. The other girls are a mixed bunch. Molly from St. Louis used to be a preacher's daughter. Sarah claims she toured with a vaudeville troupe, but she also claims to have met Queen Victoria, so take that with a grain of salt. Then there's Inez, who speaks Spanish, French and knife. You'll be learning from them, and fast. They tell you how to bat your lashes just so, how to tell when a man's lying about how much gold he has, and how to listen through the floorboards. You think that last part's a joke until the first time a fight breaks out downstairs, and you can hear the exact moment someone pulls a gun. And here's the kicker. Most of the men you'll see aren't evil, but they're desperate, lonely, carved out of hard living. Some just want to talk, others want something darker, and it's your job to figure out which is which before they cross the line. Tonight's your first shift. You've painted your lips with beet juice and lined your eyes with ash. Yes, real ash. The piano downstairs is playing a song with no name, and every time the keys clank wrong, someone yells a curse. You take a deep breath, smoothing your skirt over your hips, and step into the parlour. A man looks up. He's got the kind of beard that says he hasn't been near a mirror in months, and there's blood on his knuckles. You smile. Not because you want to, because Miss Claudine is watching, and her cane is within reach. This is the world now. Grit and lace. Blood and perfume. You learn fast or you don't last long. And here's a historical gem for you. In places like Dodge City and Deadwood, brothels were often more structurally sound than the sheriff's office. While the jail might be made of scrapwood and mud, the local madam usually paid for imported rugs, crystal lamps, and hired her own guards. Survival, it turns out, is a luxury business. Oh, and the quirky fact of the night. Some brothels had menu cards with coded services, from champagne baths to cowboy poetry readings. Yep, real thing. Never underestimate a miner's thirst for oddly specific affection. As for scholarly debate, here's one. Historians still argue whether these women had more autonomy than their respectable counterparts. Some say yes, money, freedom of movement, no husbands. Others argue no, coercion, violence, disease. The truth? Probably somewhere in the muddy middle. Either way, you're here now. And as the sun sets over the rust-coloured hills of Whiskey Gulch, and the piano stumbles into its third chorus of Sweet Betsy from Pike, you realise something. This isn't just a job. It's survival dressed in silk stockings. You never thought you'd end up here. Not really. Growing up, you had a mother who prayed over supper, and a father who never spoke more than a dozen words a day. Your town had a single dirt road, and a preacher who liked to warn about women of sin, as if they were wolves waiting behind every tree. But wolves weren't what ruined your chances back home. It was hunger, or heartbreak, or maybe just the itch for something bigger than canning peaches and sewing until your fingers bled. Whatever the reason, you took a chance, bought a cheap train ticket west, and now here you are, on the velvet chaise in Miss Claudine's parlour, wearing rouge and waiting for the next knock on your door. That's the part they never tell you. Most women didn't choose this life for thrills. They chose it because the world didn't offer much else. Some, like you, came from farming families too poor to feed another mouth. Others were widows with mouths to feed, or women who had been ruined by the standards of the day, which frankly could mean anything from being caught walking with the wrong man to being assaulted and blamed for it. There were girls who ran away from abusive homes and found the saloon lights warmer than any hearth they'd ever known. Then there were the dreamers, the ones who wanted to sing on stage or wear satin or just feel important for 5 minutes. The truth was, if you had no husband, no family and no job skills beyond sewing or cooking, working in a brothel paid better than almost anything else. Certainly better than scrubbing floors in a boarding house or serving stew in a miner's camp. A soiled dove, as the papers like to call you, could earn more in one night than a laundress maid in a week. You hated that term, by the way. It made it sound like you were just fluttering around, dirty and tragic. But there's nothing delicate about survival. In most towns, especially the boom towns springing up overnight near gold and silver strikes, the ratio of men to women was often 10 or even 20 to 1. A woman, any woman, was in high demand. And the brothel, it was often the only place where a woman could get a roof over her head, food in her stomach, and something that resembled protection. Of course, protection was relative. You were protected from the cold, from starvation, maybe from the sheriff if you were on good terms with the madam, but you weren't protected from every man who walked through the door, drunk and wild and looking to take something that wasn't his to have. Miss Claudine was one of the better madams. She took a hefty cut of your pay, of course she did, but she also made sure the girls were fed and the rooms were stocked with clean linens. She even had a doctor, of sorts, who stopped by once a month to check on the health of the house. He smelled like gin and coughed into his handkerchief a lot, but it was better than nothing. Other madams weren't so kind. In some towns, brothels operated like jails. Girls were locked in their rooms, fed only enough to keep working, and punished if they tried to leave. Some were tricked into coming west with promises of dance jobs or housemaid work, only to be forced into prostitution under threat of violence. They called that white slavery, and while it wasn't every brothel, it happened enough to leave scars in the history books. But even in the better houses, you were expected to keep up appearances. That meant painted cheeks, curled hair, stockings without runs, and smiles that looked easy even when your ribs ached from last night. A good smile could save your life, because if a man thought you were sassing him or laughing at him, things could turn fast. You learn to read moods like weather. You know when a man's drunk enough to be generous, and when he's just drunk enough to be dangerous. Some women tried to soften the reality with stories. They'd say, "I'm only doing this till my fiancé sends for me," or "Once I save enough, I'll open a shop." And some actually did. But most just kept going, day after day, night after night, until they were too sick or too broken to keep on. Then what? If you were lucky, the madam let you stay on as a cleaner. If not, you were out on the street, and the town wasn't exactly kind to aging brothel girls. And here's a bit of actual history for your nightstand brain. The famous mining town of Virginia City, Nevada, once had over 100 cribs. Tiny one-room brothels lined up behind the main street like chicken coops. Some of those rooms were barely 6 feet wide, with just enough space for a bed, a chair, and a candle. Girls would work 12-hour shifts in them, seeing man after man through the same swinging half door. quirky fact? In some high-end brothels, girls were expected to learn basic French phrases to appear more cultured. They didn't actually speak French, just memorised romantic-sounding sentences to make the minors feel like they were with a fancy European mistress, instead of a girl from Kansas who'd never seen the ocean. And here's a scholarly debate that keeps popping up in dusty university archives. Were these women empowered by earning their own money, or were they trapped in an exploitative system they couldn't escape? Some feminist historians argue that madams created female-run economies within male-dominated towns. Others point out the lack of choice and the risk of disease, violence and addiction. Honestly, maybe both are true. Maybe it was empowering and awful, freeing and soul-killing. Depends on the day, depends on the girl. You don't know yet which way it'll go for you. Right now, your corset pinches every time you exhale, your feet already hurt, and someone's knocking on the parlour door downstairs. The piano's playing that same tune again, sloppy, hopeful, and Miss Claudine just looked at you with that sharp nod that means it's your turn. So you stand up, smooth your skirt, and remind yourself of your new name, Maisie Rose. You whisper it like a prayer and walk into the night. They call her Miss Claudine, but around the house no one forgets who's really in charge. She doesn't smile much, unless she's trying to convince a judge to look the other way about the noise complaints. She walks with that cane more like it's a badge than a tool, tapping it twice on the parlour floor when she wants silence, or wants sharp crack when a girl's getting out of line. She says little, watches everything, and has a memory like a bookkeeper's ledger. You get the feeling she could tell you what every man in town prefers in the bedroom, how much he tips, and whether he tucks his boots under the bed or leaves them at the door. That first week she tells you the rules, not with kindness, not even with a warning tone, just cold facts. No drinking on the floor, no men upstairs without payment, no fighting in front of the clientele. You get sick, you tell me. You get pregnant, you still tell me. If you get mouthy with a man and he leaves angry, I deduct it from your cut. If he hits you, I'll handle it, but only if you followed the rules. It's like boarding school with whips and whiskey. But oddly enough, you start to understand why it works. This isn't just a business. It's a war zone dressed in satin, and Miss Claudine's not running a charity, she's running a fortress. Her own past is a mystery, of course. Some say she was a Southern belle whose husband died in the war. Others whisper she used to be a girl like you, years ago, and worked her way up until she didn't have to take clients anymore. Once, in the kitchen, you hear her snap at the cook. I didn't climb out of a crib just to go soft now. So yeah, maybe she did start down here in the trenches. The house is run like clockwork. Breakfast is served at noon because no one wakes up before then. You're expected to be bathed and painted by 2, ready for gentleman callers by sundown. You rotate the front parlour shifts. 3 girls downstairs at a time, the rest either resting, cleaning, or dealing with whatever the previous night left behind. Clients aren't allowed upstairs unless they've paid up front. Some pay double to spend the whole night, but most are in and out faster than the girls can finish lighting the oil lamp. You keep the door cracked, never locked. Miss Claudine forbids it. If something goes wrong, she says, I need to get in fast. Don't try to be clever. Clever girls end up dead. You nod like you understand, even though you don't, until 2 nights later when a man gets rough with Inez. She screams, the door flies open, and Claudine's cane hits him in the face so hard it shatters his nose. He stumbles out, clutching his bloody mouth, pants halfway down, and no one even flinches. Miss Claudine just says, he won't be back, and returns to her paperwork like nothing happened. There are fines. Oh yes. If you break a dish, you're fined. If you miss your turn at the window or snap at a client or show up late to supper, there's a fine. Even using too much bathwater can get you written up. At first it seems cruel, nickel and diming you to death, but you soon realise the fines keep chaos out. The brothel survives on routine. Predictability is safety. And in a town where half the men carry guns and the other half carry syphilis, safety is more valuable than gold. Miss Claudine also enforces the house ledger. Everything you use goes on your tab. Face powder, dresses, perfume, hair combs, soap. If you want a nicer corset, that's extra. Candied lemon peels for your breath, extra. You realise, painfully, that even though you're earning, most of it is being fed right back into the house. Still, a roof is better than the dirt, and for all her edge, Miss Claudine does provide food, bedding, and, when necessary, her own brand of justice. There's a legend in the house about what she did to a man who beat one of the girls so badly she couldn't walk for a week. They say she had 2 of the bouncers take him out back behind the stables. One of them came back with blood on his boots and the man was never seen again. When someone asked what happened, Claudine said flatly, "He tripped over his own bad behaviour." No one asked again. It's strange living under the rule of someone who terrifies you, and yet might be the reason you're still breathing. You start to feel a weird loyalty toward her, like the loyalty a soldier has for a tough sergeant. She doesn't love you, and you don't love her, but you both need each other, and in a town like this, that's rare. One night, while polishing the buttons on your shoes with an old cloth, you ask Molly how Claudine keeps everything under control. "Fear," she says, not even looking up. "And favours. Everyone in this town owes her something, or she knows something they don't want out." You ask if Claudine ever takes clients. Molly laughs, a harsh little snort. She doesn't need to. She owns the whole board. We're just pieces. You begin to see it for yourself. The sheriff comes by some nights, not for services, but to hand over envelopes and sip tea in the side room. She knows the undertaker's wife by name. When the preacher's son disappears for 2 days and shows up looking wrecked and wrung out, she makes sure no one breathes a word. She's not just a madam, she's a power broker. She just happens to do it in a house full of feather boas and moaning bed springs. Here's your historical tidbit for the night. In many Wild West towns, madams were some of the only women who could own property. Laws were stacked against women, but sex work was such a vital economy that brothel owners were allowed to own land, hire staff, and even sue clients for unpaid debts. They couldn't vote, but they could build empires. And the oddball fact? In at least 2 recorded cases, madams were elected honorary mayors by mining towns. One even served as postmaster because no one else wanted the job, and she always handled business on time. Wild, right? And the debate? Some historians argue that women like Claudine were just replicating patriarchal systems, creating their own little kingdoms by stepping on the backs of younger girls. Others insist they were disruptors, carving out power in a world that offered them none. You suspect it's both. Claudine doesn't want to fix the world, she just wants to rule her corner of it, and in this house, her word is law. You look in the mirror again, your eyes are rimmed in kohl, your dress cinched tight, your curls sprayed with lavender water. You don't recognise the girl in the reflection, she doesn't blink much anymore. Downstairs, the cane taps once on the floorboards. Time to earn your keep. You learn quickly that what you carry in your corset can save your life. It's not just about perfume and pretty things, it's about what you can reach in a second, without fumbling. Tonight, as you slide your arms into your lace gloves and adjust your bodice in the cracked mirror, you double-check your hidden kit. Because looking desirable and staying alive are part of the same job. First, a tiny blade, no longer than a finger, slipped between the stays of your corset. You weren't sure about it at first, it pokes when you bend. But after hearing Molly's story about the drunk miner who tried to force her into the alley behind the saloon, you stopped questioning it. She'd managed to slice a deep enough cut across his arm to distract him long enough to get inside. He still walks with a limp, and she keeps the blade under her pillow now, just in case. Second, a vial of smelling salts. Not for fainting, though that happens too. These are for when a client passes out and you need to rouse him, or when you've had one whiskey too many and need to stay alert. Sometimes it's for another girl who's gone pale from shock, usually after a rough hour upstairs. The sharp sting under the nose brings people back in a snap, even when their eyes are vacant. Then there's the rouge. Made from crushed petals and wax, it's more than decoration. It gives you colour on a sick day, makes you look younger when you feel old. A little dab on your lips, a little sweep on your cheeks, and no one can see the exhaustion living in your bones. You're taught to apply it lightly, like you're pretending you're surprised, but not too surprised. Someone's fallen for you. Hairpins too. So many hairpins. Not just to hold up curls, but to pick simple locks, scratch a note in soft wood, or poke a man in the eye if he won't let go. Inez once told you she kept a whole row of them up her sleeve. If they're close enough to touch my hair, she said, they're close enough to get stabbed. And the garter pouch? This one's clever. Tucked beneath your skirts, around your thigh, it holds your real valuables. Not jewellery. That stays in the drawer, too easy to steal. No, this is where you stash your coins, a tiny pencil stub and sometimes a folded scrap of paper with an address or a train schedule. Just in case. You never know when just in case will become the plan. You also keep a handkerchief scented with lavender, both for modesty and for masking smells. Not all the clients are kind, not all are clean. You hold it to your nose when they start to reek of whiskey, or worse, fear. Fear has a smell. Once you know it, you never forget. And finally, the little flask. Not all girls carry one, but you do. Just a sip before a tough session can smooth the edges off your nerves. Too much, and you'll mess it up. Slur your words, stumble, get fined. But a little whiskey courage, that's sometimes the difference between playing a part and freezing in the spotlight. You keep your toolkit hidden. The clients aren't supposed to know what's in your corset. They think it's just lace and perfume and maybe a love letter from a man back east. Let them think that. Let them imagine you're soft and breakable. It makes them sloppy. And if something ever goes sideways, you have what you need. The truth is, survival here depends on preparation. Some girls scoff at the tricks, say it makes you paranoid, but the smart ones, they watch, listen, and learn from those who've made it longer than a year. You're starting to do the same. You think about Miss Claudine's story about the girl named Violet. No one knows where she came from. Some say New Orleans, some say backwoods Arkansas. But she was the kind of beauty men talked about like a ghost. Pale skin, black hair, voice like silk. She lasted 6 months. One night a travelling card sharp got too rough. She didn't scream, just bled out quietly, behind a closed door, while everyone else was downstairs laughing at a joke no one remembers now. After that, Miss Claudine ordered every girl to carry something sharp. "We sell fantasy," she said, "but we protect our reality." That stuck with you. The reality is that even when you're done for the night, you're never truly off. You sleep light. You listen for footsteps in the hallway. You learn which floorboards creak, and how many seconds it takes to unlatch the window. You test the hinge on your lamp to see how well it swings, just in case you need a makeshift weapon. And despite all this, you still wake up some mornings with bruises you don't remember getting, sore ribs from holding your breath too long, and a smile you forget how to turn off. History time. Women working in Wild West brothels often carried their own improvised self-defense tools. Hat pins, razors, and even pepper powder kept in decorative perfume bottles. A well-aimed hat pin to the cheek could leave a man marked for weeks. One famous madam in San Francisco reportedly handed out metal fans sharpened at the edges to her girls. Functional, fabulous, fatal if necessary. The quirky corner tonight. In some high-end brothels, girls were expected to carry calling cards with poetic nicknames. Things like the Twilight Rose or Lady Ash. These weren't just for charm. They let clients pretend they were meeting someone romantic rather than buying time with a stranger. It gave the illusion of civility, even when civility was nowhere to be found. And here's the scholarly angle for this one. Some historians argue that the ritualization of brothel culture, down to the makeup routines and self-defense habits, served as a kind of psychological armor. The more ritualized the prep, the less personal the transaction. Others push back, saying that over-romanticizing these behaviors ignores the trauma beneath them. Were the corsets empowering? Or were they just part of the costume in a play no one asked to audition for? Maybe it's both. Maybe your little blade is both protection and confession. Maybe your garter pouch isn't just a hiding place. It's your real heart, tucked away somewhere no one can easily reach. Tonight, you check everything twice before heading downstairs. Hair perfect, rouge in place, blade tucked in. You breathe once, deeply, and feel the weight of everything you carry, not just under your skirts, but in your chest. The piano's already playing. The night has started. Time to step onto the stage again. You don't expect luxury here, but still, the first time you step into the room you're assigned, yours, supposedly, you feel that brief flicker of hope. Maybe it's the warm glow of the kerosene lamp or the velvet curtain that half sways in the window breeze. Or maybe it's just that the door finally shuts behind you and no one's yelling. It's not a palace, but it's private, and that counts for a lot out here. Then you sit on the bed. Crook. One leg's shorter than the others, and the mattress is a sack of straw that's been beaten into a lumpy shape by bodies, boots, and time. The pillow smells like lavender, sweat, and cheap gin. You find a hairpin under it, not yours. The wash basin is chipped, and the pitcher holds more rust than water. There's a mirror nailed to the wall, but it's warped, like something out of a funhouse. You smile into it and your mouth bends in 2 directions. Still, it's yours, for as long as you keep up the work. Some rooms are better. Inez has one with a window that actually locks, a little iron bolt she slides into place each night. She's been here over a year, and that's earned her perks. Molly's room is smaller but has a thicker door. She wedges a chair under the knob when she sleeps. No one says it aloud, but every girl here has a trick for keeping the night on the other side of the wall. The rooms are all arranged in a single crooked hallway upstairs, like a boarding house but less polite. Miss Claudine's office sits at one end, door always closed, unless she's summoned someone. At the other end is a back stairwell that leads down to the kitchen, and past that the alley. That door has saved lives more than once. Your room, Maisie Rose's room, is second from the top of the stairs. Good for hearing who's coming up, bad for avoiding notice. There's a hook for your dress, a shelf with chipped teacups that no one uses for tea, and a trunk you don't lock because, honestly, there's nothing in it worth stealing. You do your best to make it feel like home. You tear a page from an old magazine and pin it to the wall, an illustration of a woman in a pale blue dress standing in a garden. You've never seen a garden like that. You fold your stockings neatly, you tuck a pressed wildflower into your washstand drawer. Little rituals, tiny comforts, as if a few soft things can erase what happens here after sunset. The girls decorate their rooms in strange ways. Molly lines hers with scarves, reds, purples, oranges, like she's trying to live inside a flame. Sarah burns incense she swears wards off bad spirits and worse men. Inez keeps feathers, not hanging from anything, just arranged in little fans across her windowsill. I like the idea of wings, she told you once, even if I never grow my own. You start to understand the code. The rooms are more than places to work and sleep. They're small sanctuaries, or illusions of one. Claudine says she keeps them furnished to please the eye, but the truth is, if a girl can't close a door on the world now and then, she breaks faster, and broken girls don't earn much. You find out quickly that the doors don't lock from the inside. That's on purpose. Miss Claudine says it's for safety. If a girl gets into trouble, someone needs to be able to get in fast. And while that's true, it also means you're never really alone. A man could push in if he wanted to. Some try. That's why the chair against the doorknob becomes second nature, like brushing your hair or checking your garter pouch. One night you wake to the sound of heavy footsteps outside your door. You freeze. The knob rattles, then stops. You hear someone breathing through the gap at the bottom. You don't move, barely breathe. Then the footsteps retreat. In the morning no one mentions it, but Molly gives you a look over breakfast that tells you she heard it too. No words, just a shared understanding. Some things are better left unspoken. Want some historical context to chill your bones. In many 19th century brothels, the girls had no control over who was allowed in. Clients paid the madam, and that meant access, sometimes whether you were ready or not. And while some madams provided guards, others looked the other way if a paying man got violent. Rooms were designed for efficiency, not privacy. A single oil lamp, a bed, maybe a dresser. That was it. No locks, no real security, just layered smiles and desperation. But here's your quirky tidbit. Some women personalised their rooms so elaborately that local men would specifically request them just for the decor. One girl in Tombstone, Arizona, became famous for covering her entire ceiling with pink ribbon. It gave the illusion of sleeping under a cloud. Clients paid extra just to lie there and stare upward. She said it made them quieter, maybe even gentler. Ribbon therapy, Wild West style. And here's the debate that still simmers in academic corners. Were these bedrooms symbols of autonomy or of captivity? Some historians argue that decorating the space gave women a rare sense of agency in a world that offered them little else. Others insist the rooms were cages dressed up in wallpaper and illusion, and that the so-called ownership was just more performance. Did the rose-scented pillow make it home, or just a prettier prison? You're not sure. Sometimes, when the night's quiet and the lamp flickers low, your room feels like a shelter, a tiny corner of the world you can control. Other times, when the springs creak under a man's weight and your back aches and you can't remember what your voice sounds like. When it's not selling something, it feels like a cell. But every night you clean up. You tuck the sheets back in, wipe the basin, comb your hair. You do it because you have to. Because tomorrow's just a few hours away, and your room's the only place where no one watches you cry. You're not the only one who does this. In the early morning, just before sleep, the hall grows quiet, and all you hear are soft footsteps, water splashing in basins, the click of a comb through tangled curls. The house settles like an old cat, and each girl folds herself back into the small world of her room. Even now, yours smells like the man who was here an hour ago. Sweat, smoke, and a hint of pine. He was quiet, paid in silver, left without a word. You didn't ask questions. You never do. You open the window, let in the cool air and breathe deep. Somewhere far down the street a dog barks. The stars are sharp tonight and the moon glows like bone. You sit on the edge of the bed, blade back in your corset, your eyes tracing the ceiling cracks. This is your space, for now, and you hold it like it's the last thing in the world that's still yours. The bell rings downstairs and your stomach drops. Not with fear exactly, but something close to it. Call it anticipation maybe, or exhaustion dressed up in a pretty hat. Either way, your shift's started, and that means you're back on display. The parlour is already buzzing by the time you make it down the stairs. Smoke hangs thick in the air, curling from cigars and the crackling fireplace, swirling with perfume and sweat. You catch the scent of cinnamon whiskey, fried meat, and something less pleasant, unwashed bodies that haven't seen a bath in weeks. You brace yourself, pulling your smile into place like a weapon. Tonight is payday for the miners. That means heavy pockets and wandering hands. The parlour fills fast. Cowboys, prospectors, drifters, a railroad man still in uniform, dirt on his boots and desperation in his eyes. These are the clients, your clients. You're not supposed to judge, and most of the time you don't, but you notice things. Like the man with the stitched coat who tips big but never talks, or the gambler who pretends he's rich until the bottle runs dry and he's asking if he can trade his watch for another hour. You learn to catalogue them in your mind. The sweet ones, the brutes, the lonely ones who just want to hold someone for a while without saying a word. Miss Claudine keeps a ledger behind the front desk. She logs everything. Names, or aliases, payment, room numbers. She knows exactly where every girl is, what time she went upstairs, and who she's with. You used to think it was just bookkeeping. Then one night, Inez didn't come back down when she was supposed to, 10 minutes late, and Claudine had already sent one of the guards up to check. Turns out the client had passed out on top of her, drunk and twice her size. They had to drag him off like a sack of grain. So now, every night, every girl is expected to tap 3 times on the floor with her heel when the session is done. No tap, no silence, no checkout. Someone comes knocking, that's the system. Primitive, but it works. Tonight the piano player's actually halfway decent. He's not drunk yet. He plays a lively tune while one of the girls, Pearl, dances half-heartedly in the middle of the room. She's good at faking energy, even when her eyes look tired. You join her near the chairs, settling beside a man who introduces himself as Buck. No last name. He smells like horses and rain. He has one gold tooth and keeps glancing at your legs, but in a way that seems more admiring than hungry. You ask him where he's from. He says Wyoming. You pretend to be impressed. He asks your name, and you smile and say, Maisie Rose, like you believe it. He chuckles and says, that's a fine flower name. You laugh, light and practiced. Inside, you're counting how long it takes him to bring up the stairs. Some of them are polite. They ask if you'd like a drink, others are impatient. How much? They whisper, not even meeting your eyes. One man once dropped coins into your lap like you were a wishing well. You didn't say anything, you just stood up, counted the silver and walked him upstairs. Every client is different. Some talk too much. Tell you about their wives, their sons, the land they hope to buy once their claim comes through. Others treat you like furniture. One man cried into your chest for a full hour and then tipped you $3, more than most. You didn't ask why he cried. You never do. Some burdens are too heavy to name. Then there are the dangerous ones. You see it in their hands first. Tight fists, dirt under the nails, or in the way they sit like a coiled spring. They don't smile, or they smile too much. Some have scars they won't explain. Others grip your arm too hard before you've even said hello. These are the ones you try to pass off if you can. Sometimes Miss Claudine helps. Sometimes she doesn't. A few months back, one of the girls, Callie, took a man upstairs who looked normal enough. Brown eyes, soft voice, clean clothes. 20 minutes later, she came down with a split lip and silent tears. Claudine kicked him out and blacklisted him, but the damage was done. Callie quit the next day. Didn't even collect her things. You never saw her again. Those are the nights you remember, not the good tips or the ones who fall in love too easily. The bad ones burn into your memory like hot iron. Historical fact for the night. In Deadwood, South Dakota, a brothel worker named Kitty Leroy famously carried a gun and challenged abusive clients to duels. She ran her parlour like a saloon, cards, drinks and women, and was known to wear men's clothes and gamble better than most. She died young, like many of them did, but she left a legend behind, the madam who wouldn't be touched unless she allowed it. Quirky detail. In some towns, girls would rank clients with secret codes after each visit. One brothel reportedly used coloured ribbons tied to doorknobs. Blue meant sweetheart, red meant rough, yellow meant drunk but harmless, and black meant don't let him back. It wasn't official, but it was survival. A colour system scrawled in lipstick could save a life. And here's a scholarly point of debate. Was the emotional labour, listening, comforting, pretending to care, more damaging than the physical work? Some historians say yes. The constant masking, the forced affection, the need to make every man feel special even when your soul is worn thin. That's what broke most women in the long run. Others argue the emotional work gave them power, control over their performance, leverage to shape a client's mood. But power like that is brittle. It cracks if you push too hard. Back in the parlour, Buck finally asks, "Can I take you upstairs?" You nod. He pays Claudine without blinking and follows you up the steps, careful not to spill his drink. You lead him into your room. He takes off his hat, sets it gently on the chair. He looks around like he's afraid to break something. You offer him a seat on the bed, but he shakes his head and stands. "I don't want anything like that," he says quietly. Could we talk?" You blink. It's not the first time someone's asked that, but it always surprises you. You sit beside him and listen to his voice unravel a story about a wife he left behind, a son he's never met, and a dream he doesn't believe in anymore. He doesn't touch you, just speaks, eyes damp, words slurred with sorrow. When he finally leaves, he presses a silver coin into your hand. "Thank you," he says, like you did something holy. You close the door, lean your back against it, and slide down until you're sitting on the floor staring at your knees. Another night, another stranger's grief poured into your lap like rainwater through a hole in the roof. You wipe your cheeks, not sure when you started crying, and reach for your handkerchief. Downstairs, the piano keeps playing and the parlour roars on. By now, you can tell what kind of night it's going to be, just by the way the wind feels on your skin when you open the shutters. Some nights are slow and sultry, the town half asleep under a lazy moon, and the men come in smelling of tobacco and stories. Other nights, the hard ones, begin with the wind rattling loose shutters and rolling dust across the road like a warning. That's when the bar fills fast, the shouting starts early, and you know it's going to take everything you've got just to make it until morning. Tonight, it's the second kind. Wind sharp enough to sting your cheeks. A buzz in the air like a swarm about to descend. You can feel it in your spine as you finish dressing. Corset pulled tighter than usual, hair pinned high. Downstairs, the piano's off key already, and one of the girls is cackling too loud at something a man said. Except he didn't say it to be funny. You walk into the parlour and the heat hits you like a breath. Bodies packed in too tight, whiskey splashing over tables, cigar smoke making your eyes water before you've even blinked. There's already a man passed out by the fireplace, his boots half off, and another arguing with the card dealer over what sounds like the rules to blackjack. The kind of arguments that never end with a handshake. Miss Claudine is posted at her usual corner, watching everything without seeming to. She doesn't move much, just sips her tea and lifts a brow here and there, like a puppeteer tugging strings with invisible fingers. She catches your eye and nods once, your cue to slide into the floor rotation. You spot Pearl already trying to calm down a client who thinks she shorted him 5 minutes. You walk past like you don't see it. You've learned not to stare when trouble's starting. Makes it worse sometimes. The piano player Jasper is drunk. Again. His playing is a train wreck, but he's fast and that keeps the room humming. Tonight he's pounding out some mangled version of Camptown Races, while nodding at you like you're in on the joke. You aren't, but you smile anyway. You grab a seat at the edge of the room where the lamplight doesn't quite reach. It gives you time to scan the crowd. Who's new, who's already angry, who's likely to tip and who's likely to swing a punch if he doesn't like the colour of your dress. You spot at least 3 men with pistols slung low on their hips. One of them has a knife tucked into his boot. You make a note of where he's sitting, just in case. Then you start working. It's subtle at first, laughing a little too easily at a joke, brushing a hand against a sleeve, complimenting someone's ridiculous hat. You lean in when you talk, because that's what they want, to feel seen, like they're not just another face in a town that forgets people before they're even gone. You make them feel important, wanted. That illusion buys you tips and keeps the blood off your bodice, but tonight, it's harder. The men are restless. A few fights have already broken out in the saloon across the street, and some of that chaos has drifted inside. One guy pulls a chair back so fast it topples, another shouts something about losing his gold stash and slams his whiskey glass down hard enough to crack it. You feel your whole body tighten. If the mood in this room tips the wrong way, there's not enough muscle here to stop what comes next. The guards are watching too. Big men in dark vests, arms crossed, posted near each door. They don't talk much, but when they move, things tend to stop moving. You're grateful for them, most nights. But even they have limits. You once saw a man grab a girl by the throat, shove her into the wall before anyone could stop him. It took 3 men to pull him off. She didn't come back for a week. When she did, she wore a scarf for a month, even when it was hot. That's the kind of night tonight is shaping up to be. You're talking to a client named Henry. Nice enough, smells like sawdust and mule, but you keep one eye on the bar. A young man with twitchy hands and a bad temper is knocking back his 4th drink in 10 minutes. He's glaring at the piano player, muttering to himself. Jasper doesn't notice, too busy murdering a ballad and flirting with a girl named Clara. Then it happens. A chair flies, shatters. The twitchy man shouts, "You cheated!" No one's sure who he's yelling at. Maybe the dealer, maybe the shadows. But suddenly he's drawing his gun, and the whole parlour freezes. Your heart slams against your ribs. Miss Claudine stands up. She doesn't shout, doesn't run. She just walks calmly toward him, cane in hand, eyes locked like a rattlesnake about to strike. The man sways, snarling, gun shaking in his fist. Claudine stops 3 feet away and says, voice like ice, "Put that down, son. You don't want to do what you're about to do." And just like that, one of the guards steps behind him and clubs him with the butt of his pistol. Quick, clean. He goes down like a sack of rocks. The girls exhale. Slowly, movement returns to the room. Glasses are raised, murmurs begin again, and Claudine adjusts her gloves like she's brushing off dust. The man is dragged out the back, still breathing, but not much else. Jasper starts up a lively tune, like nothing happened. You turn back to Henry and smile like your heart isn't racing. He offers you a sip from his flask. You take it. Here's your historical fact. Gun violence in brothels wasn't just a cinematic trope, it was an everyday threat. In many western towns, brothels were located close to saloons for convenience, which meant drunk, armed men wandered in at all hours. It wasn't rare for brawls, shootings, or full-on raids to erupt without warning. Girls learned to recognise body language better than most lawmen. And the quirky detail. Some brothels hired pianists not for talent, but specifically because they could play loud enough to drown out noise from upstairs, or chaos downstairs. The more raucous the song, the less likely folks outside would hear something unfortunate. Tonight's scholarly debate. Was the ever-present threat of violence part of the appeal for clients? Some suggest that the lawlessness of brothels gave men a twisted sense of power. They could act without consequence in a space society already considered immoral. Others say it was the only place many men felt vulnerable enough to express anything real, and the violence came from being unable to handle that intimacy. Maybe it's both, or maybe the Wild West just chewed people up and didn't care who swallowed blood and who swallowed shame. Later you return to your room, close the door softly behind you, and let yourself fall onto the bed without undressing. Your ears still ring from the shouting. Your hands are still cold, but you survived the night. You wake up stiff. Not from sleep, because you didn't really sleep, but from curling yourself so tightly under the quilt that your muscles feel like coiled wire. The wind still howls outside like it's hungry. You blink at the ceiling, cracked and yellowed from 100 oil lamps, and wait for your breath to settle. There's a soft thump upstairs, someone pacing in the attic room, and muffled laughter through the walls. Another morning in the house, if you can call 11 a.m. Morning. You force yourself out of bed and into your robe, woolen and worn at the elbows. The mirror greets you with brutal honesty. Your cheeks are sallow, makeup smeared where tears must have fallen sometime in the night. You didn't even notice. You splash water on your face, barely warmed from the kettle Molly left in the hall. Steam curls up as you press a cloth to your eyes, the fabric damp and scratchy. Somewhere downstairs a bottle clinks. Someone's up early, or never went to bed. Breakfast isn't quiet. It never is. Girls drift in and out of the kitchen, some still yawning, others already gossiping or recapping last night's madness with exaggerated flair. Inez is spooning porridge into her mouth while Pearl smokes out the window, looking more ghost than girl. The parlour chairs are still tilted from the fight. No one's cleaned up the broken glass. One of the guards sweeps it into a pile with a look that says he's not paid enough for this. But beneath all that, beneath the foggy heads, the tired banter, there's something you always look for. The security system no one talks about. Red light security isn't what people imagine. There's no uniformed officer with a whistle, no hired detective watching from the corner. There's just a handful of people who know how to move quickly, quietly, and with the right kind of force. Start with the house guards. 2 men, sometimes 3. They're not part of the fantasy sold upstairs. They're the muscle, the wall between chaos and collapse. Everyone calls them the boys, even though they're both pushing 40. Jonah, the larger of the 2, has a moustache wide enough to shelter under. He used to work railroad security and once claimed to have thrown a man off a moving train for spitting on a woman. The other, Harris, is quieter. Slick hair, soft voice, but his knuckles are scarred and he never misses a detail. You've never seen him blink when someone reaches for their coat too fast. Their job is simple. Keep the girls breathing and the clients in line. Most nights they just stand near the stairs, arms crossed, watching. They rarely speak, but when they do, it's fast and final. No second chances, no courtroom. Then there are the house signals. Claudine's system isn't written down, but it's passed between girls like sacred scripture. A tap of the cane on the floor means get ready. 2 taps means trouble brewing. A snap of fingers at the desk is a silent escort this man out. It's all built on subtlety. You don't escalate unless you have to. Men hate to feel cornered, even the drunk ones. Every room has its own set of protocols. If you scream, you better mean it. Otherwise no one will come. But if you knock your heel 3 times on the floor, that's a distress signal. Quiet, fast and unmistakable. Someone will be there. You've used it once, just once. And the sound of Jonah's footsteps thundering up the stairs that night is something you won't forget. Another piece of the security system is architectural, hidden by design. You know how to open the kitchen cellar door from the inside and escape into the alley. It's a tight fit, but it leads to a tunnel dug out beneath the house. Old mining shaft. Claudine had it reinforced and bricked out years ago. Only the girls and the guards know about it. If a fire ever breaks out, or worse, you're meant to grab your shoes and run like hell through that tunnel until you come up behind the livery stables. There's also the dumbwaiter, originally meant for dishes, now used to pass notes. You've used it more than once to warn another girl about a client who came up friendly and left furious. Slide the note in, pull the rope, and it lands just outside the kitchen. Discreet, fast, untraceable. Of course, there are flaws in the system, there always are. You can't control the unexpected, when a man brings a knife hidden in his boot or when the guards are distracted breaking up a fight downstairs and someone slips past. The most dangerous ones don't always yell. Sometimes they smile, offer extra silver, say, please. You learn not to trust that. There was a girl named June once. Pretty thing. Too nice. She believed a man who said he was a banker. He wasn't. He took her up to her room, and by the time anyone noticed she didn't do the heel tap, it was too late. She survived. But barely. The banker disappeared before sunrise. Some say Claudine had him dealt with. Others think he just skipped town like so many cowards do. Here's a historical truth. Brothels in the Wild West often had more sophisticated security than most banks. They had to. Between angry husbands, drunk miners, jealous lovers, and the occasional moral crusader with a torch, these houses were under constant threat. Some had hired gunmen, others bribed local lawmen for protection. Some even kept coded ledgers with names of powerful men, insurance policies in case the law ever came knocking. Quirky detail. One brothel in Kansas reportedly installed a series of bells and pulleys hidden inside the walls. Girls could yank a cord from their room, and it would ring a bell behind the parlour. Each room had a different chime. Clients thought it was just wind chimes. In reality, it was a lifeline. And the debate here? Scholars argue whether this kind of security structure empowered the women or just further institutionalized their vulnerability. On one hand, systems of protection allowed brothels to function with some semblance of order. On the other hand, they existed because the world outside, and often inside, was too dangerous to navigate alone. Safety was a privilege you paid for, and even then, it wasn't guaranteed. By midday, you've done your rounds, eaten cold biscuits, and checked your room for anything out of place. You change your sheets, you refill the oil lamp, you test your window lock. Useless, but you still check. You tuck your little blade back into the corset seam where it belongs. Later tonight, the saloon next door is throwing a party. That means drunk cowboys, loud music, and a line of men at your door who don't know the rules, or don't care. The house will be full and every girl will be on shift. So you breathe deep, you stretch, you do your makeup slowly, methodically, and you pray, just a little, that the security holds. Because when the sun goes down in a place like this, the only thing between you and the grave might be a creaky floorboard, a dumbwaiter rope, and a man named Jonah with a pistol under his coat. It always starts the same way, too loud, too fast, and already out of control. The saloon next door is shaking its walls tonight, the kind of party where the whiskey flows like water and bullets are just punctuation in conversation. You can hear the piano over there banging away in double time, drowned occasionally by a hoot, a scream, or the shatter of glass. There's a brawl on the front steps before midnight, 2 men wrestling in the mud like dogs while a third cheers them on from the porch with his trousers half unbuttoned. You don't even blink anymore, it's just a Friday. Inside Miss Claudine's, everything's tightly wound. The air is thick with tension and perfume, and every girl's eyes are sharp like they're trying to see 5 minutes into the future. You check the parlour clock as you pass. It's almost 11. This is peak time, the hour when everyone's drunk enough to forget their manners, but not quite drunk enough to pass out. It's the most dangerous window of the night, and every woman in the house knows it. Tonight you're paired with Inez for floor duty. You like working with her. She doesn't talk much, but she sees everything, and she's quick to step in when someone's getting handsy. You've watched her shut down a rowdy client with a single stare, the kind of look that says, "I've stabbed bigger men than you." It's not a bluff. The parlour's a mess. Furniture is rearranged by sheer force of drunken gravity, cigarette ash piles in saucers meant for bonbons, and the lace curtains smell like cigar smoke and spilled gin. There's a card game happening on the far end, a few men crowded around a table, their voices getting sharper with each hand. Claudine's watching them, one gloved hand wrapped around her cane like it's itching for trouble. You serve drinks, you laugh when you have to, you keep your distance unless invited, and you keep a mental tally of the ones who are getting too loud, too red-faced, too handsy. One miner already tried to grab your wrist and pulled back a nub of his pride when Inez poured a cold drink in his lap without blinking. "Oops," she said. No apology. He stormed out wet and confused. Then there's the cowboy who keeps circling the room. Big hat, bad attitude, and a scar down his cheek that looks like a lightning bolt. He hasn't picked a girl, hasn't sat down, just stares. At first, you ignore him. Then you can't. Something about the way he moves, the way he doesn't smile. He's not here for company. He's here for something else. You drift closer to the stairs, subtly positioning yourself near the route up to the rooms. Inez catches your glance. She nods. The cowboy hasn't paid, hasn't spoken, just looms. That's often worse than shouting, and then like clockwork the fight starts. Not with fists this time, words first. The card game erupts. Someone accuses someone else of cheating. Chips go flying. A chair tips. One man pulls a knife. The guards move in fast, Jonah barking commands while Harris grabs the wrist of the man with the blade and slams it onto the table so hard it bounces. The knife clatters. Everyone freezes. You think, okay, that's it. We've hit the peak. But no. Because just as Harris picks up the knife to hand it to Claudine, someone else shouts, louder than anyone yet, and the cowboy with the scar finally moves. You see the glint before you hear the sound. His revolver clears the holster and fires once into the ceiling. Wood splinters rain down. Someone screams. You hit the floor without thinking. Inez grabs your arm and drags you behind a couch, hissing, "Stay down!" as another shot rings out. The parlour erupts into chaos. Claudine is on her feet. The guards have drawn weapons. Clients bolt for the door or drop behind tables. You hear another gunshot, then silence. It all happens in less than 20 seconds. The cowboy is face down. Harris stands over him, gun still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. The room is quiet, aside from the ticking of the parlour clock and the sound of your own heartbeat thudding in your ears. You don't stand up right away. No one does. Even after the body's dragged out, even after Claudine says, voice firm and controlled, everyone still breathing can stay. The rest kindly get out. Only about half stay. By midnight, the party is subdued. Clients are quieter, tipping more, drinking slower. The girls are tense but smiling, muscles working on instinct. Claudine has reset the whole room in under an hour. That's her gift. She doesn't let a single second of fear hang in the air longer than it needs to. But you're shaken. All of you are. Upstairs, later, you sit on your bed, corset half undone, staring at your shaking hands. You've seen guns before, been near them, but tonight it felt different. The kind of different that makes you reconsider everything. You think about June again, about the other girls who left without warning. Maybe they had nights like this. Maybe this is what finally broke their backs, even if they smiled through it. Here's your historical dose of realism. Wild West brothels saw more gunfire than you'd expect. Because brothels were often outside the law and filled with desperate men, they were hotspots for violence. Some towns passed no weapons rules for red light districts, but good luck enforcing them when half your clientele lives by the gun. Quirky detail. Some brothels had what they called bullet bottles, ceramic jugs filled with sand kept behind the bar or under the girls' nightstands. If a bullet came flying, the bottle could absorb the shot. Makeshift sandbags hidden in plain sight, decorative and occasionally life-saving. The scholarly debate here: did the danger heighten the allure for some of the women working in these houses? Some suggest there was a sense of adrenaline and power in dancing so close to death, a flirtation with risk that some women leaned into. Others argue the women were desensitized, forced to normalize violence as a coping mechanism. It's not thrill-seeking when survival demands it. You lean your head back against the wall, your ears are still ringing, your corset is cutting into your ribs, and you think about leaving. But then you remember the tunnel beneath the house, the 3 taps, the blade in your corset. You're not defenseless, not anymore. Still, tonight was close. Too close. The aches creep in slowly. They always do after a night like that. Adrenaline gives you a false sense of strength, but once it drains, your body starts tallying every bruise and strain. You wake stiff, with a knot in your shoulder and a dull throb behind your eyes, like someone pressed their thumb into your temple and left it there overnight. You roll over and stare at the water stain on the ceiling. It's shaped like a horse if you squint, or maybe a dragon. Either way, it's been there longer than you. You pull yourself out of bed and wince when your bare feet touch the cold floorboards. You shuffle to the washstand, splash your face with yesterday's water, and glance in the mirror. Dark circles, cracked lips, and one curl sticking sideways like it's trying to make a run for it. You look exactly how you feel. Downstairs, the girls are quieter than usual. No one's hungover. That would imply they drank enough to forget. No, everyone remembers. The gunshot, the dust, the sickening silence afterward. Inez has a burn on her wrist from falling against a lamp during the chaos. Clara's got a cut on her knee. Pearl's still jumpy. She flinched when Jonah opened the back door too fast this morning. You stir your porridge and eat mechanically. The air in the kitchen is heavy, like the house is still holding its breath. Miss Claudine isn't here yet. That's rare. She's usually seated before any of you, sipping tea and scanning the ledger like a general reading casualty reports. Her absence makes the room feel off balance, like someone shifted the earth half an inch to the left and didn't warn anyone. Then she appears, hatless, hair-pinned in a messy knot still in her dressing gown. She says nothing, just pours coffee and takes her seat. You all pretend not to stare, but you're staring. It's the first time you've seen her not fully composed. The cane leans against the table beside her, and she looks at it like she wants to throw it. She finally speaks. Harris will be doubling shifts for the next few nights, she says, voice low. No exceptions. No one argues. You nod. Even Pearl nods, eyes still wide. Then Claudine adds, almost as an afterthought, "Doctor's coming tonight. Anyone feeling off, get checked. I don't want to bury another one this year." There's a pause. And that silence? It means someone's sick. You glance around. Molly's not here. Her chair is empty, bowl untouched. Inez catches your eye, shakes her head slightly. Not good. You remember the last time a girl got sick in this house. High fever, shaking hands, blood on the sheets. She tried to hide it, but by the time Claudine called for help, her skin was grey and her mouth was foaming. The doc said it was syphilis, stage 3, too far gone. She was gone by the weekend. No one ever took her trunk. You wash your bowl and head upstairs, the air colder with every step. The hallway creaks under your weight, and the smell of lavender and lamp oil mixes with something sour. You press your ear to Molly's door, a cough, wet, ragged. You tap once. "Moles, you okay?" Silence, then her voice, small and scratchy. "Don't come in." You don't. You lean your forehead against the wood and exhale. "The doc's coming," you say. "Too late," she whispers. That night the doctor arrives. Doc, of course, is a generous word for a man who smells like turpentine and gin, and keeps his tools wrapped in an old tobacco pouch. Still, he's seen more sick girls than you can count, and he treats you like people, which is more than some do. He spends 15 minutes with Molly. When he emerges, his face says more than his words. "Rest," he tells Claudine, "and quarantine." Claudine nods once, then turns to Jonah. "No one in or out of that room until I say." And just like that, Molly becomes a ghost behind a locked door. The rest of you step up without being asked. Inez brings her food, sets it outside the door. You leave a book, even though you're not sure she'll have the strength to read. Clara offers to pray, though no one takes her up on it. No one wants to admit we might be past prayers now. It brings a new kind of fear to the house, not the flashbang fear of a gunfight, but the slow, creeping dread of illness. The kind that doesn't shout, just whispers in your bones. Every sore throat becomes suspect. Every chill, every headache. You find yourself checking your own body like it's a stranger, watching for signs, for changes, for betrayal. Claustrophobia sets in. You can't open windows without Claudine's permission. No visitors except clients, and only in short shifts. The parlour starts to smell stale, like perfume pressed over mould. The piano goes untouched. Jasper doesn't show for 2 nights, probably spooked. And the fear? It doesn't just come from illness. It comes from what it reveals. Like how Claudine burns Molly's linens after 2 days. No ceremony, just bundles them up, carries them out back, and sets them alight in the fire barrel. Sanitation, she says. But no one misses the finality of it. You all watch the flames rise. Here's your historical fact. STIs were a leading cause of death among sex workers in the Wild West. Penicillin wasn't available until the 1940s, so infections like syphilis and gonorrhea often went untreated or were misdiagnosed. Mercury rubs were a common cure, except they poisoned the patient more often than the disease. And a fringe tidbit: some brothels swore by folk remedies, lemon wedges soaked in vinegar as makeshift contraceptives, or herbal teas made from yarrow and mugwort to cleanse the blood. One brothel in New Mexico was rumoured to use copper coins worn in the shoes to draw sickness downward. Strange? Yes, but when you're desperate, everything sounds like science. Tonight's scholarly debate: was the medical neglect of brothel workers deliberate? Some scholars argue yes, that society dehumanised these women so thoroughly it didn't care if they lived or died. Others point out that access to doctors was a luxury for most people out west, and brothels often had better medical setups than poor homesteads. Still, the fact remains, if you got sick in this house, your chances weren't great. You pass Molly's door again before bed, still no sound. You whisper through the wood, "Still here, Moles?" A pause, then barely audible. "For now." You go back to your room, light your lamp, pull the quilt tight, and you wait for the next sound in the hall, hoping it's not the one that means goodbye. The house gets quieter when one of the girls is sick. Not the good kind of quiet, like a warm hush after laughter, or the lull of a rainstorm outside the windows. No, this is the silence that clings to everything like dust in an abandoned room. You still go through the motions. You wake, dress, paint your face. You smile in the parlour, pour drinks, entertain clients. But beneath every conversation, behind every joke, is the nagging weight of waiting. Everyone's listening for the same thing: the creak of Molly's door opening, or the sound of the undertaker's cart pulling up out back. By the 3rd day, she's stopped responding. Inez still leaves food outside the door, but it sits there untouched until Claudine removes it herself. You don't ask what she does with it. You don't want to know. By now you've developed a new morning ritual. Press your ear to the door, hold your breath, wait for any kind of sound. Even a cough would be welcome. Silence is worse. Silence feels like death taking its time, but work doesn't stop. It never does. And when things feel bleakest, some of the girls lean harder into distraction. You start to notice a change. More flasks passed around. More opium pipe smoke curling up from behind closed doors. More coin disappearing into hands not meant for tips. Drugs aren't new in this house. They're practically part of the wallpaper. But you've always kept your distance. A little whiskey now and then. Sure. Maybe a peppermint shot to clear your head after a tough night, but not like this. Not to forget. Not to vanish. But others aren't as strict. Pearl slips laudanum into her tea every night now. Just enough to float, she says. If I can't feel my body, then he can't hurt it. You don't argue. How could you? She has bruises down her ribs that haven't faded since spring. Clara's taken to chewing coca leaves when she thinks no one's watching. "Keeps me light," she whispers with a glassy grin, "like I'm not even in the room." Once, you find her sitting on the hallway floor, giggling at nothing, legs sprawled like she forgot how to walk. Even Inez, sharp, grounded Inez, has started sipping from a hidden bottle before her first shift. You catch her once, eyes red and unfocused, brushing her corset smooth with trembling hands. She doesn't say a word, just nods and walks away. You don't judge them. How could you? This job pulls at the seams of a person until something's got to give. And if a girl finds a way to dull the edges, just for a little while, maybe that's survival, not surrender. Still, you wonder where the line is, between staying steady and slipping, between self-medication and self-erasure. Miss Claudine doesn't interfere unless someone starts getting sloppy with clients. She has one rule. You can do what you like to yourself, but if it starts affecting business, I'll show you the door. And you believe her. There are girls who worked here last season who just disappeared. Maybe they moved on. Maybe they didn't. The pharmacy down the road knows most of the girls by name. The clerk there, Walter, is young, and he never asks questions. Just passes the bottles over with a nod, a paper-wrapped packet, or a tin of cough powder labelled for female nerves. You've seen more than one girl unwrap those packets like they're holy relics. Your turn comes faster than you expect. It's after a rough session with a client who wouldn't take no for an answer. Even though you didn't say no, not exactly. You didn't get a chance. He wasn't violent, not outwardly, just insistent, fast, cold. You left the room with a few coins in your palm and the kind of nausea that doesn't come from food. You feel your hands shaking as you scrub the basin clean. Your corset's still on, you haven't taken off your boots, and you're standing there, staring at your reflection, wondering if you've gone hollow. That's when Pearl knocks on your door, steps in and holds out a small brown bottle. "Just a sip," she says, voice soft. You won't even remember what he smelled like. You hesitate, then you take it. The laudanum burns sweet, like cough syrup soaked in sadness. It hits you slow, then all at once. The world melts a little. The corners of the room round off. Your thoughts loosen their grip. You sink into the bed without taking off your clothes, eyes heavy, limbs warm. And for the first time in days, you sleep without dreaming. You wake up late. Groggy but lighter. The weight in your chest still there but quieter. And you think, I see why they do it. You also think, that can't happen again. Still, the temptation lingers. Here's your historical truth. Laudanum, an opium tincture, was one of the most commonly used medications in the 19th century. It was cheap, widely available, and considered a cure-all for pain, sleeplessness, anxiety, and female complaints. Brothel workers used it heavily, not just to numb physical pain, but to survive the psychological toll of their work. Addiction was rampant. And your quirky fact: some brothels had house blends, custom-made mixtures of laudanum, alcohol, and herbs sold exclusively to the girls. One madam in Colorado even bottled her own, branded with a rose on the label and the slogan, "For when the world asks too much." The debate? Some argue these substances gave women control over their own comfort, tools to navigate a brutal world on their own terms. Others see them as instruments of further control, drugs that dulled resistance, silenced protest, and made it easier to keep working long after the body said stop. You sit on the edge of your bed that evening, holding the brown bottle in your hand. You don't drink it, not tonight. You set it on the dresser and cover it with a scarf like a secret. Down the hall, Molly coughs once, barely a whisper. You close your eyes and count the seconds between now and the next knock at your door, unsure whether it'll be a client, a doctor, or the end of the night asking how much more you can take. There's a language in this house that's never spoken aloud, not in full anyway. A flick of the hand, a raised brow, a single glance across the parlour floor. You learn quickly that survival here isn't just about knowing how to smile or how to move your body just right. It's about knowing how to talk without talking. You first notice it with Inez. She's working a client at the poker table, leaning close and laughing like he's the funniest man west of the Mississippi. But then, mid-laugh, she brushes a curl behind her ear with her pinky raised. Subtle, deliberate. That's her signal. This one's a problem. Pearl sees it from across the room and adjusts her garter. Another code. Keep eyes on her. Could go bad. A third girl, Clara, leans into a client and accidentally knocks over a drink near the poker table. The ruckus distracts just long enough for Jonah to get a good look at the man Inez is dealing with. He steps closer, arms crossed, posture casual. No one says a word, but the energy shifts. 10 minutes later, Inez stands up, excuses herself, and walks away. No trouble. Just a quiet extraction, choreographed like a dance. That's when you realise this place runs on more than routine. It runs on code. The hand signals and body language have evolved over time, passed down from girl to girl like heirlooms. Some of it is common sense, some is invention, and some, like the full list of warning signs carved into the bottom drawer of the dressing table, is sheer genius. That list, hidden under a loose board, was started by a girl named Tilda back in '68. She's long gone now, but the notes remain. If a man taps his boots more than twice, he's hiding nerves or a weapon. If he offers to pay double before saying hello, expect trouble. If he brings a gift, check it for a hidden blade before smiling. If he smells like mint and not whiskey, he's a preacher in disguise. Avoid. It's like reading a guidebook to the Wild West's most dangerous species. Men with money and something to prove. Even the brothel's furniture holds secrets. The blue vase on the mantel, tip it slightly left and it means get me out of here. The tassel on the front curtains, if it's tied in a knot, someone's been banned from the house but might return. You're told not to untie it unless Claudine herself gives the word. Girls wear accessories like conversation. A red ribbon means I'm off the floor tonight, don't ask. A green one means first-time client, stay close. A necklace flipped backwards signals something's off. And the house ring, simple brass with a tiny etched rose, can be used to knock 3 times on the underside of a table, a sound that's recognised by every guard and worker in the building. You've picked it all up fast, maybe faster than you expected. Part of you thinks it's because you had to. The other part wonders if something in you always knew how to survive this way. Quietly, quickly, invisibly. But the codes aren't just for danger, they're for mercy too. You see it when Pearl slips her hand across Clara's back and gives a small squeeze, a way of saying, I've got you. You see it when one girl pretends to need help with her corset so another can escape a clingy client. You see it when the girls all stop moving at once just for a breath, when they hear Molly cough behind the door upstairs. It's not affection exactly. It's not friendship in the usual sense. But it's a bond made in fire. You all speak the same silent language now. That night, you're assigned to a man named Cole. He's big, polite, and dressed too well for the part he's playing. He insists he's a cattle trader, but his hands are too soft, his boots too clean. He watches everything too closely. You give Inez a glance. She sees your tight shoulders and returns a quick motion, taps her thumb to her chest, then brushes it away. Keep him talking. He's a watcher. You nod. As you lead Cole upstairs, you count the steps out of habit. 12 up, 8 across. Your room's the 3rd door. You don't let him walk ahead of you. You unlock the door slowly. Keep him in sight. Always. Inside, the room feels colder than usual. He notices. You girls must not get much time off, he says, tone friendly. But there's something behind it. You laugh gently, touch your hair, sit in the chair instead of the bed. He asks you questions, too many. Where are you from? How many girls work here? What's Miss Claudine's real name? You smile and deflect. A girl's got to keep some mystery, you say, but you're watching, and you're waiting. When he stands to pour himself a drink, you quickly twist your necklace backward. Signal sent. 30 seconds later, a knock. Everything all right in there, Maisie? It's Harris. Cole smiles tightly. Just chatting. That's so? Harris opens the door a crack, lets his eyes roam the room. Then to you. You nod. Barely. Just enough. Client's got to wrap it up, I'm afraid, Harris says smoothly. House rule. We're short on time tonight. Cole doesn't argue, but he doesn't tip either. Just nods and leaves, eyes lingering on you like he's memorizing something. It makes your stomach twist. You exhale when the door closes. After you find Inez and give her the sign, thank you. She nods. Doesn't smile. She never does. Here's your historical note for tonight. Brothel workers in the American West often developed intricate in-house communication systems, both verbal and non-verbal, to protect one another from violent or dangerous clients. This was especially common in higher-end parlour houses, where discretion was expected, and help might not come fast enough if a girl couldn't signal for it. And your quirky tidbit. Some houses even created coded client rating books, small journals hidden in dressing tables, full of symbols and shorthand notes like, don't take upstairs, equals good tipper, equals might be lawman. One woman in Colorado was famous for drawing tiny skulls next to the names of clients who gave her bad dreams. That book was passed down for 3 generations, and the scholarly debate? Anthropologists argue over whether this type of coded language empowered women with real agency, or simply created the illusion of control in a rigged game. Were these signals acts of rebellion, or just survival dressed up in shorthand? You decide it doesn't matter, because tonight those quiet signs might have saved your life, and tomorrow you'll learn new ones, because the longer you stay in this house, the more fluent you become in the one language that really matters, the one that keeps you breathing. There's an old saying among the girls, it's not the men who kill you, it's the women. And that might sound dramatic until you've spent a year living under velvet and vice, where everyone's smiling until someone's not. Most outsiders assume brothel life is just a slow crawl through male violence, and yeah, that's not wrong. But what they miss, what you live, is the mess of competition, jealousy, and sabotage that comes from being packed together like powdered keg fuses, all scraping for the same coins and safety. Rivalries are as old as the house itself. Sometimes they start over tips, or clients, or a stolen dress, or maybe just a glance that lingers too long. Girls don't need much of a reason to draw lines, and once the lines are drawn, no amount of talking smooths it out. Your first real rivalry comes with a girl named Daisy May. Sweet voice, killer smile, always looks like she's about to offer you a biscuit, until you're alone, and she's locking eyes like she wants you dead. She came in last month, all peaches and petticoats, but it didn't take long for her to start turning heads. She has that kind of face, all softness and candlelight, and the men line up like moths. Which wouldn't be a problem except she decided you were in her way. It starts small. Missing rouge from your table, a laced-up corset too tight you know you didn't tie yourself, clients she whispers about before you can greet them. Then one night, you're in the parlour, waiting on a regular, quiet man, decent tipper, and Daisy drapes herself across his lap like you don't exist. You stand there, lips parted, and she just smirks over her shoulder like she's winning a game you didn't know you were playing. You don't complain. That's the first rule. You never bring drama to Claudine. She hates mess, hates whining. If she sees a fight bubbling, she handles it herself, and no one wants that. So instead, you keep your smile sweet and your eyes sharper. You watch, wait, keep your distance. But rivalry isn't always just petty jabs. Sometimes it turns mean. Sometimes it turns dangerous. You've heard stories. Everyone has. Like the 2 girls in Kansas who poisoned each other's perfume bottles with belladonna. Or the madam in Tombstone who set fire to her competitor's parlour and claimed it was a lightning strike. More than a few brothels have burned to the ground under suspicious circumstances. Rags soaked in kerosene tucked beneath floorboards. Candles knocked accidentally into drapes. Even in this house, whispers float through the halls about the girl who fell down the stairs last year, twisted her neck so badly she couldn't work again. Accident, they said. But Inez swears she saw Clara and another girl arguing with her the day before. Nothing ever came of it. No charges. Just a quiet packing of trunks and a new girl in her place by the weekend. And then there are the rivalries between houses. Whiskey Gulch has 3 brothels. Miss Claudine's is the biggest, the most refined, though that word means less than it sounds. Across the square is Red Annie's, cheaper, rowdier, and known for its bar fights. Then there's the Gilded Pillow, run by Madame Estelle, a former showgirl with a thick French accent and sharper heels than most men's boots. Estelle and Claudine have a long, bitter history. Nobody knows exactly what started it. Rumours range from a stolen lover to an unpaid debt to one of them poisoning the other's cat. But whatever it was, the feud is real and dangerous. Girls who leave Claudine's and end up at the Gilded Pillow are considered traitors. They don't come back. Sometimes they vanish altogether. Once, a girl named Nella left in the dead of night with a carpet bag and high hopes. A week later, someone found a brooch she always wore buried in the dirt behind the stables. No one saw her again. Estelle's girls sometimes linger outside Claudine's on slow nights, just to stir the pot. They wear brighter colours, laugh too loudly, flirt with the clients in line. A few months ago, one of them threw a rock through the parlour window and left a note. "You can't cage birds forever." Claudine didn't respond. She just hired a second guard. You can feel the tension in the air whenever talk of other houses comes up. No one wants to end up across town. No one wants to be labelled disloyal. And Miss Claudine, She treats poaching like treason. But the fiercest fights happen inside the house. One afternoon you walk into the dressing room and find Daisy May rifling through your drawer. She jumps when she sees you, tries to smile, play it off, but you're done pretending. You slam the drawer shut, look her dead in the eye and say, "Touch my things again, and I'll lace your corsets so tight you'll see stars for a week." She smiles wide. Is that a promise? Later that night, someone puts chalk in your face powder. You don't sleep easy for a week. Here's your historical fact. Rivalries between brothels in the Wild West were common, often violent, and sometimes fatal. Competition for clients, territory, and even delivery of supplies like alcohol or laundry services could spark full-on feuds. Some madams paid enforcers to sabotage rival houses. Others used blackmail or threats to keep their edge. And your quirky tidbit? In one Nevada town, rival brothels fought through competing parades. Girls would march through the street in extravagant costumes, throwing flowers or candy to lure clients to their house. It wasn't always bullets and poison. Sometimes it was bows and brass bands, and the ongoing academic debate. Some scholars argue that rivalry between women in brothels was a byproduct of capitalism and scarcity. Limited clients, limited safety, limited respect. Others claim it was internalized misogyny turned violent in an environment that rewarded silence and compliance. Either way, the structure made it easier for women to fight each other than the system keeping them there. You think about that as you lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Another day gone. Another subtle jab. Another round of tension in the hallway. Daisy May walked past you tonight and breathed the words, "He liked me better," with a smirk. You didn't react. You don't have to win. You just have to outlast her. And you always do. The sheriff comes in just after sunset, boots heavy, spurs jingling like bad news. His badge catches the lamplight as he tips his hat to Miss Claudine, who doesn't stand or even acknowledge him at first. That's the kind of relationship they have. He makes a show of control and she lets him believe it. It's a delicate dance, like two cats pretending not to see each other, tails twitching under the parlour glow. He's not here for work, not official work anyway. He's come for Clara. Again. He always picks Clara, never pays, at least not with coin. They go upstairs without speaking. Clara doesn't smile, doesn't blink, just follows, slow and silent, like a woman on her way to confession. You don't ask questions. You never do when it's him. It's not that the law doesn't exist in Whiskey Gulch. It does. There's a jailhouse, a courthouse, a whole wall of wanted posters nailed up across from the general store. But the law doesn't walk straight in this town. It limps, slouches, drinks too much and picks favourites. Especially when it comes to women like you. Sheriff Harlan Mayfield is one of those types who believes rules are more like suggestions, particularly when you run the only jail within 50 miles and carry a gun with your name etched into the handle. The girls call him Sheriff Maybe, as in, maybe he'll arrest you, maybe he'll shoot you, maybe he'll just show up in your bed smelling like pipe smoke and cheap gin, expecting gratitude. Miss Claudine plays nice, mostly because she has to. She lets him in, gives him whiskey, lets him take what he wants in small doses, as long as it doesn't cost her girls too much. But even she has her limits. Once he slapped Pearl across the mouth during an argument. Claudine said nothing in the moment, but the next week his horse went missing for 2 days and showed up tied to a fence post 3 towns over, covered in tar and chicken feathers. No one ever proved a thing, but Sheriff Maybe never touched Pearl again. The real problem is that the law doesn't see you. Not as real women, not as citizens, certainly not as people deserving of protection. You're tolerated, taxed and used, but never defended. If a client beats a girl half to death, she has to look pretty while explaining it to the sheriff who might have been in her bed the night before. And justice? That's just a kind of myth you sell to children and strangers passing through. You learn quickly that you have to enforce your own kind of law. Your rules. The house's rules. And Miss Claudine's law, as arbitrary as it can be, is still better than what waits outside. When a man breaks house rules, refuses to pay, gets rough, starts snooping where he shouldn't, you don't call the sheriff. You call Harris, or Jonah, or, if it's bad enough, Claudine herself, who can ruin a man with a single sentence whispered into the ear of the town's banker or mayor or saloon owner. She's built a web, and she knows exactly where the pressure points are. She's never had to raise her voice. She just remembers everything. One night, a man walks in claiming to be a Pinkerton agent. Big coat, serious face, and a tin badge that might have been real once. He starts asking questions about the girls, about clients. wants to see Claudine's ledgers. You see her stiffen for half a breath before she nods and leads him into the side room. They talk behind closed doors for 20 minutes. When she emerges, he's gone. Later, she burns a page from the ledger. No explanation. Just ashes curling in the fireplace, and a rare flicker of something you almost think is fear in her eyes. Law doesn't just come in uniforms. It comes in letters with wax seals, men in suits who never smile, whispers about morality leagues and reformers sent from cities back east. You know of one house, over in Drybone, that got shut down after a preacher's wife took it upon herself to rescue the girls. 6 women hauled out like criminals and put into workhouses. One was dead within the month. No one asked them if they wanted saving. And the law, it didn't stop the preacher's wife. It praised her. That's the cruel twist of it all. The law will ignore you until someone decides you're a threat to their idea of virtue. Then, suddenly, you're surrounded, searched, questioned, judged. When Daisy May got pregnant last spring, she went to the doctor in secret. Word got out. The sheriff warned Claudine she was harbouring immorality. As if that wasn't the house's whole business. Claudine paid a bribe. Daisy vanished 2 weeks later. No one talks about it. You don't ask. Here's your historical truth for the night. Many brothels in the American West operated under uneasy truces with local law enforcement. Sheriffs and deputies often accepted bribes, or more subtle favours, in exchange for looking the other way. In some towns, madames paid more in taxes than the saloon or general store. But if a moral panic hit or a political enemy needed a scapegoat, the brothel was the first place raided. And the quirky fact. In some towns, brothel girls were required to carry medical papers signed by a doctor, proving they were disease-free. These papers were often forged, of course, but the irony. The law made them responsible for public health while ignoring the behaviour of the clients who paid to be there. Here's the debate that still hangs in textbooks and dusty archives. Did the women of these houses hold a kind of power by knowing everyone's secrets, by having the sheriff on a leash made of favours and gossip? Or was that power just another leash in disguise? Temporary, performative, always one scandal away from snapping. You want to believe Claudine holds real power, that you're safe under her roof, behind her curtains, with her cane tapping the floor when things go sideways. But when the law doesn't care, really doesn't care, you know it's all just an act, an illusion with lace trim. Tonight, Clara comes back downstairs after her session with the sheriff. She doesn't say a word, just pours herself a shot of something amber and downs it in one gulp. Her hands shake, her eyes don't. You sit beside her without speaking. She leans into your shoulder just a little, and that's all the justice you're going to get. Every Sunday morning, without fail, the church bell rings like a judgment from the hills, slicing through the quiet with all the subtlety of a gunshot. The whole town stirs as if by instinct. Shopkeepers open slow, children are scrubbed clean and stuffed into stiff clothes, and women in high collars march toward the chapel with a determination that looks suspiciously like rage in a bustle. It's all very orderly, very proper, very performative. You watch it from the upstairs window sometimes, sipping weak tea and letting the steam cloud the glass. The townfolk file past the brothel without looking up, without looking at it at all, as if ignoring the house means it doesn't exist, as if every man who came through your door the night before has suddenly been reborn, pure and pious, ready to sing about salvation without so much as a blush. It's a ritual, this willful forgetting. And it cuts both ways. Inside the house, Sundays are slower. Girls sleep in, the parlour is quiet, and Claudine lets the cook make biscuits instead of porridge. Sometimes, if the morning's warm enough, she even opens the windows. You pretend you can't smell the sour judgment drifting in from the street. By noon, the first notes of the church choir reach your ears, warbling, off-key, earnest. And for a moment, you wonder what your life might have looked like if things had gone differently. If you'd married the store clerk back home, if your father hadn't lost the farm, if you'd stayed in school, worn clean gloves to Sunday service, and never learned how to hide a knife in your bodice. But then you remember last night. The coins tucked in your boot. The man who said you saved him from a darker kind of loneliness. The way you handled yourself when another client got grabby and you shut him down with nothing but a smile and a well-placed knee. You're not ashamed. Not really. Not anymore. But that doesn't mean the town sees it that way. Respectable folks don't speak to you in daylight. The baker who flirts with you every Thursday night won't meet your eyes when you pass his stall. The blacksmith who paid extra just to hold your hand one time crosses the street if he sees you near the mercantile. Even the school marm, who once came in crying and left with Clara's handkerchief and a secret in her pocket, acts like you don't exist when she's wrapped in lace and surrounded by church ladies. It's a kind of magic, really, how people can compartmentalise so thoroughly, how they can climb into your bed at midnight and then damn your soul at dawn. The worst of them, though, are the wives. They glare when you walk through town on errands, tight-mouthed, eyes sharp, hands clutched around parasols like they're weapons. They don't say anything outright, not often, but the venom is in the way they look at your hemline, the way they sneer at your perfume, the way they gather their skirts when you walk by, like shame might be contagious. It would almost be funny if it weren't so exhausting. Claudine once said, "We're the thread that holds this whole town together, and the stain they pretend isn't there." You didn't understand what she meant at first, but you do now. The bakery sells more pastries on mornings after the brothel's busiest nights. The laundry shop is always full of your silks and petticoats. The doctor comes more regularly because Claudine pays him more than most of the town combined. Your money is everywhere, just not your name. Still, some cracks in the mask appear. Quiet, careful kindnesses from people who know better than to acknowledge you but do it anyway. There's the old woman at the apothecary who always tucks an extra paper of mint leaves into your pouch. The boy at the stables who brings your horse around without being asked, and pretends not to hear what the other boys say about girls like you. The seamstress who mends your underthings with care, her face a mask of polite neutrality, but always leaves a lavender sprig pinned inside your corset bag. These are the people who see the house for what it is, not a den of sin, not a threat to their children's innocence, but a necessary part of a system they all participate in, whether they admit it or not. And yet, when the town council hosts events, you're not invited. When there's a dance, a social, a community potluck, they act like your entire row of houses doesn't exist. You are part of the town, and apart from it, a contradiction they refuse to examine too closely. Historical fact. In many frontier towns, brothel workers were both excluded from public life and crucial to it. They donated to local charities, helped build schools, even sponsored fire brigades. Their money was welcomed, their presence was not. They were often the first to contribute to relief efforts during crises, fires, floods, disease outbreaks, yet remained socially untouchable. Quirky detail. One brothel in Montana anonymously funded the town's library for 3 years. No one talked about where the money came from, but everyone used the books. The girls used to joke that they'd educated half the town while being forbidden from setting foot in the reading room. And the debate that still circles among historians like buzzards over a moral battlefield. Were brothel workers oppressed women trapped by systemic injustice? Or were they entrepreneurs exploiting society's double standards for their own survival? Did they suffer because of the hypocrisy, or thrive despite it? You've lived both sides of that argument. You've been the shamed and the savvy, the victim and the strategist. Some nights you feel like a prisoner, other nights a queen behind velvet curtains. Sunday passes slowly, like molasses in January. You spend most of it writing in a small notebook no one knows you keep. Lists of clients, bits of poetry, scattered dreams. You watch the sunlight shift across the floor and think about the choir singing praises for souls they believe are still redeemable. You wonder how many of the men in those pews carry your perfume on their collar. You wonder how many of the women scowling into their hymnals have husbands who'll slip past your parlour door after dark. You wonder, but you don't care. Not anymore. Because while they're baking pies and rehearsing virtue, you're counting coin, sipping coffee, and watching the town march past in starched collars and self-deception. They'll forget your name by morning, but they'll remember your scent. You're not supposed to make friends in this job. Not real ones, anyway. You can share lipstick, pour drinks for each other, even cry into the same pillow on a bad night. But underneath it all, everyone's still chasing the same thin sliver of safety, and it doesn't leave much room for trust. That's what Claudine says anyway. Don't confuse shared wounds with friendship, she once warned. A fox will cuddle up next to you just to steal your warmth. And yet, people surprise you. It starts small. A loaf of warm bread wrapped in wax paper, left on the back stoop one morning with a note that simply says, "For the girls who never rest." No name, no signature. But the handwriting is delicate. Careful. You pass the bread around the table while still half asleep, and no one says much, but you see how their shoulders soften. Then there's the barber's wife. Quiet, pretty, dresses like she's trying to disappear. She starts slipping you little tins of pomade and hand lotion through the side window when you go in to get your hair trimmed. "The desert dries skin worse than sin," she jokes once, voice low, eyes nervous. She never stays long, just drops the tin into your palm and retreats behind the curtain like a ghost. But the gesture lands. In a world where you're used to being stared through, even a soft glance feels like an embrace. One night, during a heavy storm that turns the roads into rivers of sludge, the brothel lights flicker out. Claudine has the candles ready in seconds. Of course she does. But the mood inside turns heavy, nervous. The girls cluster together in the parlour and Jonah stands by the door like he's expecting something to go wrong. Everyone's on edge. Then a knock. Not sharp or urgent, gentle. You open the door to find the undertaker's apprentice, soaked to the bone, holding a basket of firewood and 2 oil lamps. "Figured you might need these," he says, awkward. Pa says the storm's knocked down half the lines. He sets the basket inside and leaves before anyone can thank him properly. The lamps burn steady all night. You don't know his name, but you remember the quiet pride in his posture, like he'd done something brave. These little kindnesses are easy to miss if you're always watching for the knife. But they're there. You see it in the livery boy who braids ribbons into the girls' horses' manes, claiming it's to keep the flies away, but you know better. In the young school teacher who dropped her book near the general store and let you help her pick it up, brushing your hand and whispering, "I'm sorry for what they say." In the older woman at the millinery who slips a scrap of leftover lace into your pocket after you buy your third-hand bonnet, just so you'll have something nice. Not everyone in town wants to pretend you're invisible, and not all the people who offer kindness are outside the house. There's a night when Clara finds you sobbing quietly in the kitchen, knees drawn up to your chest, the world too heavy to fake your smile one more time. She doesn't ask what happened. She just sits beside you and peels an apple with slow, careful strokes. She hands you a slice without looking. The silence between you feels like the only honest thing in the room. Later, Inez sews a patch into your favourite dress. Doesn't tell you, just does it. You find it hanging in your room the next morning, mended and pressed. The stitches are uneven, but it holds. And Pearl, ever the joker, ever the lightning rod for chaos, paints your nails with crushed berry juice one night and says, "You might as well look like royalty while the world burns. You laugh harder than you have in weeks." These are the friendships that don't ask much, don't expect forever, but bloom anyway in the unlikeliest corners. And sometimes, someone even stranger stumbles in and surprises you. Like the boy with the broken violin, he comes through town with a caravan of performers, jugglers, singers, illusionists on their way to a mining camp up north. He's gangly and nervous, with fingers that twitch like he's always playing music even when he's still. Claudine lets him stay a night in exchange for playing in the parlour. He doesn't flirt, doesn't leer. He just closes his eyes and plays until the girls forget for a moment where they are. You're the one who brings him tea after his set. He looks at you, wide-eyed, and says, "You don't belong here." You smirk. "Neither do you." He laughs. Maybe that's why it feels okay. You don't kiss him. Don't ask his name. But you remember the sound of his violin, the way the notes curled through the room like candle smoke, soft and bittersweet. He leaves the next morning before the sun rises. You find a folded scrap of paper in the chair where he played. Don't let the world convince you you're not magic. You don't cry often anymore, but you do that morning. Here's a historical fact to tuck into your apron pocket. Despite their isolation and stigma, many brothel workers form deep, meaningful connections with people in their communities, quiet friendships, discreet romances, and networks of support that historians often overlook. In some towns, madams even left their estates to local orphanages or hospitals, forging ties with the very institutions that once shunned them. Quirky fact. A brothel in Colorado once hosted a gentleman's tea every Sunday afternoon, not for profit, but as a way to build goodwill with the town's more discreet allies. Invitations were handwritten, and attendance was strictly off the record. The mayor was rumoured to be a regular guest. And the scholarly debate, were these kindnesses genuine compassion, or just transactional masks designed to keep the brothel, and its workers, functional within the larger social system? Did people help out of empathy or guilt? Were these relationships real or just tolerated? You've stopped needing the answers. You just take what you're given. Because in a world built on pretending, sometimes the only thing that keeps you breathing is a peeled apple, a borrowed lace trim, and a stranger who calls you magic without expecting anything in return. You don't hear the first gunshot, not clearly. It folds into the sound of the piano and laughter, into the clink of glasses and the groan of someone sliding too deep into a velvet chair. But then comes the second, louder, sharper, closer. The kind of sound that doesn't ask permission to interrupt. It just takes the air out of the room like a thief. The music stops. Jasper's hands freeze mid-key. Someone drops a glass. You look up from your seat in the parlour, heart suddenly hammering against your corset bones, eyes scanning the faces around you. At first, no one moves. There's a collective pause, as if every person in the house has forgotten how to breathe at the same time. Then the shouting starts. It's coming from the street, booming, angry, panicked, boots hammering dirt. The crack of another shot, this one so close it rattles the window pane beside you. A woman screams outside. Not one of yours, one of the townsfolk maybe. You dart to the parlour window, careful not to silhouette yourself in the lamplight, and peek through the curtains. Chaos. There are two men in the middle of the street, circling each other like dogs in a pit. One's got a revolver, the other a shotgun. You don't know their names, but you recognise the madness in their eyes. There's blood on one man's shirt. Someone's collapsed near the water trough. People are running, men ducking behind wagons, a teenager fleeing barefoot, hands covering his head. You think you spot the sheriff ducking into the barber's like a coward, his badge glinting just before the door swings shut. The brothel isn't a safe distance. It's a target, a stage, a potential pile of splinters and bodies if the gunfight shifts even a few feet to the left. Miss Claudine's already on her feet, her cane in one hand, a pistol in the other. It's dainty, pearl-handled, and she holds it like it belongs there. "Girls," she says calmly, "downstairs. Now." She doesn't raise her voice, she never does. But the command slices through the room, and suddenly everyone's moving. You grab Pearl's hand and drag her toward the kitchen. Claire is already helping two clients through the back door, one limping and cursing. Inez vanishes in the direction of the cellar with a look that says, "If this place burns, I'm not burning with it." The house has a plan for this. You've practiced it in whispers and mock drills like it's a schoolhouse fire drill instead of a real threat. Back stairwell, kitchen tunnel, lights out, lamps doused, doors locked but not barred, makes it easier to escape. Clients who resist are left behind. There's no time for gallantry. The cellar is cold and damp, the floor covered in old rugs and boxes stacked to the beams. You've been down here before. It's where the house keeps the extra linens, the good liquor, and if needed, the emergency exit. A trapdoor behind the shelves leads to the tunnel Claudine had dug 3 winters ago, winding beneath the alley and out toward the dry creek bed. Pearl clutches your arm as the ceiling above rumbles. Someone's running through the hall upstairs. You can hear it. The thud of boots, a crash of furniture, another gunshot much closer now. Then a pause, then screaming. You don't know whose voice it is, but it cuts straight through your skin. You press your back to the wall, heart pounding, blade in your boot. It's never felt smaller. One of the girls sobs behind you. Another shushes her quickly, too quickly. Claudine crouches near the trapdoor, checking the latch, whispering instructions to Harris. "We'll wait 10 more minutes. If the street isn't clear by then, we go," someone else mutters. "We should have gone already." Claudine doesn't answer. Then silence. That terrible kind of silence, full of tension and echo and blood hanging in the air you haven't seen yet. You hold Pearl tighter. Her fingers are trembling. Yours are worse. And then, footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Inside the house. Someone slams open the parlour door. You hear it above, the unmistakable shatter of a lamp falling. A voice yells, slurred and angry, "Where is she?" Pearl's eyes widen. He's looking for someone. Then another shot. This one crashes through the floor above like thunder. You don't even scream. You can't. Your body just locks up. Everyone goes deathly still. Claudine rises slowly, nods once. "Go," she says. The trapdoor creaks open. You file down one by one through the dark throat of the earth into the narrow passage that smells like damp clay and dead roots. You hear the boards groan above as someone stomps down the hall searching. Another crash. A scream. The tunnel twists. You follow the others, crouched low, heart pounding. Pearl trips and you catch her. The walls close in tighter. Someone behind you whispers a prayer. Finally, you see moonlight. The exit. You climb out gasping, lungs full of dust and panic, and crawl into the creek bed like a wild thing. The others follow, one by one, blinking against the cold. Claudine's the last out. She closes the hatch behind her, locks it, and hands the key to Harris without a word. You wait in the dark for what feels like hours. The sounds of gunfire fade. The shouting stops. Then, nothing. Eventually someone goes to scout. Harris disappears and comes back a while later, face hard. One dead in the street, one wounded. House took 2 bullets through the parlour wall, nothing lit up. Claudine nods. We'll go back at dawn. You walk slowly toward the house just as the sky begins to lighten. You expect to find ruin, but the house stands. The windows are cracked. The curtains are torn. One chair is missing a leg, but it's still standing. You are too. Here's your historical fact. Gunfights were not uncommon in frontier towns, and brothels, often located near saloons and gambling halls, were frequent collateral damage. Some madams built escape tunnels or hidden stairways just for these moments, treating every Saturday night like a potential war zone. Quirky fact. One infamous madam in Dodge City reportedly had her girls wear wigs stuffed with folded leather during high-risk weekends. Head armour, she called it. Fashion-forward and bullet-resistant, at least in theory. The debate? Some argue that brothels were passive victims of lawlessness. Others claim they were integral parts of that chaos. Enablers, magnets, even centres of it. Did they suffer because of the violence, or because they profited from it? Historians are still arguing, survivors didn't have time to. You sit on the front steps of the brothel at dawn, brushing dust from your skirts, eyes stinging with smoke and adrenaline. The piano inside is silent, but you're alive, and that's enough. It starts with smoke. Not much, just a wisp curling from behind the stove like a breath held too long. At first, you think it's the kettle boiling dry or one of the girls burning breakfast again. You're in the parlour brushing crumbs off your lap, still sore from last night, when Pearl comes in from the back room with her nose wrinkled and her voice tight. Something's burning. The words barely hang in the air before the smell deepens. Acrid, chemical, not food, fire. You're on your feet before your thoughts can catch up, sprinting down the hallway as the first real plume of smoke snakes down from the second floor. Inez is already halfway up the stairs shouting, "Room 5! It's room 5! You don't know whose room that is, you don't stop to ask." The house ignites in motion. Girls scrambling, shouting for one another. Clara throws open every door down the hallway. Claudine's barking orders like a general in velvet slippers. Buckets! Sand. The rug. Tear it up. Smother it. Harris and Jonah are already hauling water from the barrels out back, the front door wide open to let the smoke out, or maybe to let you all escape. But the fire doesn't care about your plans. It's hungry, fast, and it has a head start. You help drag a mattress into the hallway to block the flames from crawling further. Someone shouts your name, Pearl. She's coughing hard, trying to drag her trunk from her room, while the wallpaper around her curls and blackens. You grab her wrist. "Leave it," you shout. "It's just things." But that's a lie, isn't it? Nothing in this house is just things. That trunk holds everything she owns, everything she is. You help her carry it anyway. The fire's reaching now, snapping down the hall with its wicked little fingers. Inez slams her shoulder into the window pane and starts hurling pillows into the alley below. "Put it all out there," she shouts. "Anything you want to keep." The air is choking, bitter with scorched perfume and old paint. Someone knocks over a bottle of gin trying to save the liquor cabinet, and the alcohol catches with a flash. Whoosh, sending flames up the curtains. Panic spikes. You feel it in your ribs, in your throat, in the way the girls are screaming your names and no one's answering fast enough. Claudine is the only one still moving like she's calm. She grabs the ledger first. Of course she does. Then the cash box. Then a single photograph she keeps on her desk that none of you have ever dared to ask about. Her eyes are clear. Her cane is gone. She moves with the limp you've never seen before. You lose track of time. 10 minutes. 15. It feels like hours. When you finally stumble out the back door into the alley, your face is black with soot and your arms ache from hauling trunks, linens, bodies. Your chest heaves, lungs roar. Your dress is singed at the hem. Inez is missing one boot, and still the house burns. Not all of it. Just the east side, the girls' rooms. The second floor collapses with a groan that sounds almost human. A window shatters like glass lungs exhaling their last breath. The crowd gathers fast. Townsfolk pouring in from every corner, drawn like vultures to the scent of drama and destruction. They murmur, some clutching their children's hands like shields, others staring openly. The preacher's wife makes the sign of the cross. The blacksmith looks away. None of them move to help. The fire finally dies down when the rain starts. Just a drizzle at first, then steady. The ash turns to paste beneath your boots. The parlour still stands. Claudine's office is intact. But everything else, the rooms, the linens, the secrets folded into the floorboards, is gone. Pearl sits on her trunk staring at her blistered hands. Claire is crying, but quietly, like she's ashamed to let the sound out. Inez is just standing, arms crossed, like she's daring anyone to make eye contact. And you're shaking. Not from the fire, from what you know comes next. Because fire means questions. Fire means investigations. The sheriff arrives late. Of course. He stands in the ruins with his thumbs tucked in his belt, chewing on a matchstick and pretending to care. Probably a kitchen spark, he says. Old buildings like this, they just catch. Claudine doesn't correct him. But you know it wasn't the kitchen, you know where the fire started. Room 5 at Daisy May's room, and Daisy May is gone. No one saw her leave. No one saw her run. But her bed is a smouldering pile of feathers, and her trunk is missing. She's not among the girls gathered in the alley. Not in the kitchen, not in the crowd. She lit the match. You're sure of it. The rivalry, the threats, the way she whispered to Inez last week. It only takes a little fire to clean a place out. You remember now, every word, and now she's smoke, gone with the wind. Claudine doesn't say a thing about it. She just looks over the damage, face unreadable, and finally mutters, "We'll rebuild." And you believe her, because what else can she do? Here's your historical fact. Arson was one of the most common threats brothels faced. Whether it came from angry clients, jilted lovers, religious zealots, or rival madams, fires were both weapon and warning. Insurance was rare. Suspicion was common. Very few arrests were ever made. Quirky fact. One madam in El Paso installed a bucket system that ran through the rafters of her brothel. Wooden pails filled with sand and vinegar that could be knocked loose in case of fire. Locals called it her champagne line because when it dropped, everything below smelled like salad dressing. And the scholarly debate. Were these fires acts of revenge or liberation? Some argue that girls who set fire to their own houses were seeking escape, a final break from a life they couldn't walk away from. Others say arson was just another weapon in the brothel power struggle, used to settle scores and erase evidence. You sit with your knees pulled up to your chest, watching your room collapse in on itself. No fireman came, no one ran in to help, and no one wept for what was lost. And that tells you everything you need to know about how this town sees you. By the time the ash settles and the sun creeps up over the ridge like a guilty man too late for confession, it's already decided. The fire didn't happen. Not really. Not in a way that matters to the town. By noon, the church bells still ring, the general store opens right on time, and people walk past the half-burned house with their chins tucked low, eyes sliding away like they never saw the smoke, or the women standing barefoot in it. No one asks if you're all right. No one offers a place to stay. It's Claudine who keeps things moving. She doesn't cry, she doesn't pause, she just orders Harris to board up the broken windows, tells Jonah to start digging out the scorched beams, and informs the girls that they'll be sleeping on cots in the parlour for now. "We'll work in shifts," she says, voice calm and low. "Less noise, less mess." She lights a cigarette with shaking fingers, and that's the closest thing to grief she'll allow herself. The real grief doesn't come until 3 days later, when the smell starts. It's faint at first. Just something sour, wet, buried beneath the burned wood and perfume. You notice it when you're sweeping the hallway, trying to ignore the blistered wallpaper and the way the sunlight now falls directly onto the floor where your room used to be. The scent curls around your ankles like a memory. You wrinkle your nose, say nothing. Maybe it's just rot, something left in the pantry, an old sack of potatoes forgotten in the smoke, but it doesn't fade, it grows stronger. By the end of the week it's unmistakable. Death. Pearl smells it too, so does Inez. You all pretend not to. No one wants to say it aloud. Not until Harris finally kicks in the last of the upstairs wall and finds what's left of the room behind the water closet, an old storage nook no one used anymore, barely bigger than a wardrobe. And inside it, curled up like a child in sleep, is the body. She's almost unrecognisable. Smoke-blacked, limbs tight, face pressed against the wood. No one knows her name. She wasn't one of yours. No girl is missing from the house. No trunk left behind. Not even a single corset strap to give her away. But she's here, and now she's dead. The sheriff comes, again late, again chewing that damn matchstick. He looks over the body with mild disinterest. Could have been anyone, he says. Transient, drunk, maybe got lost in the smoke. Claudine says nothing, just stands there with her cane and her silence, her eyes colder than you've ever seen them. Any of your girls report a missing friend? The sheriff asks. No, Claudine answers. Well, he shrugs. Then I reckon it's not your problem. He leaves without so much as covering the body. It's Inez who does it. Finds a sheet that isn't burned, wraps the girl up in it like a secret, and carries her downstairs with Jonah's help. You all gather in the backyard, in the small patch of earth between the garden and the alley, where weeds grow taller than most sins. No coffin, no name, just a hole dug with borrowed shovels and the quiet agreement that some people vanish twice, once from the world and once from memory. The undertaker doesn't come. The town doesn't ask. You bury her with a scrap of lace and a sprig of lavender, and you don't talk about it again. But it haunts you. You start dreaming of smoke, of girls crying behind walls, of names you'll never know. You wonder how many others like her have come through these doors, sat in these chairs and disappeared without ceremony. You wonder if someday that could be you. That's when you start to take inventory. Not of things, those are replaceable, of people. You start writing down names, not full ones, just nicknames, initials. Girls you've known, girls who've left, girls who said they were going home and never got there. You count 12 gone in the last year. A few you heard from. Letters, rumours, postcards from towns far off with ink smudged by rain. But most? Nothing. You ask Claudine about one of them, Belle. Sweet girl. Red curls, soft voice like lullabies. She left in May, said she had a cousin in Denver. You ask if Claudine ever heard from her again. No, she says, lighting another cigarette. I don't expect I will. And that's all. No sadness, no reflection. Just another girl who vanished in the night. That's when you realise something ugly. In this house, not every death gets a grave. Some get silenced, some get washed out with the sheets. Historical truth? In the 1800s, the death of a brothel worker often went unrecorded. There were no funerals, no public notices, no markers unless someone paid extra. Many ended up in potter's fields, unmarked graves dug by strangers, filled by women whose names had been forgotten by the time the dirt hit the lid. Quirky fact: some madames kept a death drawer in their desks, small wooden boxes filled with keepsakes of the girls who died on their watch, a locket, a scrap of ribbon, a lock of hair. Not out of sentiment, but as proof, because once a girl was gone, people always asked if she'd ever existed at all. And the debate? Did the lack of memorials reflect society's disdain, or the brothel's desire to shield its girls from further shame? Some historians argue that the silence was protective, a way to let the girls disappear on their own terms. Others call it erasure, plain and simple, a way to wipe away responsibility. You don't know what to call it. Not really. You just know that someone died in your house, and no one cared. Not the law, not the preacher, not the neighbours who smelled her burning and went right back to baking pies. But you cared, so you remember her, even if no one else does. You write a note in your little book, Unknown Girl, found October 12th, smelled of smoke and silence, buried near the lavender, and you tuck the page between two others, like a flower pressed in a forgotten book. Some nights you lie awake and listen to the train whistle in the distance, long, low, mournful, sounding like freedom dipped in smoke and coal. It passes through town twice a day, but the midnight run always hits hardest. That's the one you hear when the parlour's gone quiet, when the whiskey's run dry, when the other girls are curled on their cots dreaming of better places or not dreaming at all. It always makes you wonder, could I leave? It's a stupid question. Or it feels stupid. Because you know what it would take. Money, first of all. Real money. Not the handful of coins you managed to squirrel away between dress repairs and medicine, and Claudine's house fees. Then there's a plan. Where to go, how to get there, what to do when you arrive. You'd need a name that isn't tied to this house. A story that holds up. Maybe a husband, or at least a lie convincing enough to let you off the hook. Still, you wonder. And you're not the only one. Every girl in the house has her version of the escape fantasy. Clara says she wants to open a boarding house in San Francisco. One where no one touches the girls, she adds quickly, eyes fierce. Just a roof and hot food. Somewhere to breathe. Pearl dreams smaller. "I just want a garden," she says. "A porch. Maybe some chickens. A dog that doesn't run away." Inez used to claim she'd go to Paris and become an opera singer, though lately she just shrugs when asked. "Anywhere but here," she mutters. "That's the only plan." As for you, your dream changes week to week. Some days you imagine yourself teaching children in a prairie schoolhouse, surrounded by slate boards and laughter. Other days, it's a shop, a little place that smells like cinnamon and carries things no one really needs but everyone wants. Once you imagined going back home, but that fantasy turned sour years ago, when you realised home was just another cage without curtains. Sometimes girls do leave. A few months ago, one named Liddy caught the eye of a rancher from upstate. He was sweet, quiet, clumsy with his hands. He came every Thursday, brought her licorice and stories about his horses. After 6 visits, he offered to take her away. "I've got a little house with blue shutters," he said. "You'd like it." Liddy packed that night. You all said goodbye like it was a wake. Half happy, half suspicious. You've seen it before. Some men mean it. Most don't. She left in the morning, riding beside him in a wagon with squeaky wheels, hair tied back in a ribbon Clara gave her. None of you expected her to make it farther than the next town, but she wrote a letter. 2 weeks later, just 1 page. The shutters really are blue. You passed that letter around the kitchen like it was a holy relic. Pearl kissed it. Inez cried, but refused to admit it. Claudine read it last, folded it carefully, and placed it in the back of her desk. "She got lucky," she said. "Doesn't mean the rest of you will." That was her way of protecting you. She didn't want hope spreading like a fever. Hope makes girls reckless. And she's not wrong. You've seen girls try to run, slip out after dark with their savings stuffed in their corsets, boots barely tied. Most come back, some because they run out of money, some because the road is harder than the house, some because they find out that being alone in the world is just another kind of trap. One didn't come back. June. She'd been planning it for months, squirreling away coins, mapping out the train schedule, bartering with a porter who owed her a favour. She left before dawn, didn't tell anyone except Inez. That morning her room was empty, her bed neatly made, her mirror still foggy from the night before. 2 days later, a man showed up at the back door with her locket in his hand and a warning in his eyes. "She made it as far as Laramie," he said. Then someone recognised her. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. You still think about her when the train whistles, still wonder if there was another path she could have taken, another way out. Historical truth? Escaping brothel life in the American West was almost impossible. Most women had little education, few connections and no legal rights. Marriage was often the only way out, and even then, it came with its own cages. Some madams deliberately kept their girls indebted, charging for food, clothes and medicine, until leaving meant starving. Quirky fact. A few enterprising women forged exit plans by partnering with travelling salesmen. They'd hide in freight compartments or pose as widows until they reached a town where no one recognised them. One famous brothel girl faked her own death, complete with a staged funeral, then resurfaced 2 states away running a bakery. It didn't last, but for a while, she baked the best sourdough in Nebraska. And the ongoing academic debate: was the dream of escape a form of empowerment or a cruel illusion? Some say it kept the women alive, gave them something to cling to. Others argue it was another form of control, dangling false hope to keep them obedient. Is freedom still freedom if you never actually get to taste it? You don't know. You just know that when the train calls out in the dark, something in your chest answers, soft, hollow, familiar. One night you gather your savings, count the coins, $10.23, enough for a train ticket, maybe a coat, not much more. You hide it beneath the floorboard, just in case, not for tonight, but maybe for someday. Sometimes it feels like the house itself is alive, breathing, groaning, remembering. The boards creak different after a while, not just from age but from use, like they've memorised every step and stumble, every midnight sob muffled into a pillow, every laugh forced a little too high. You feel it when you walk through the hall barefoot. This place doesn't forget, and neither do the girls who survive long enough to get good at this. Some of them even learn to win. It starts with Miss Claudine, of course. She wasn't always the woman with the cane and the pearl pistol. There are whispers, never from her, about how she started. Some say she was once a house girl just like you, working out of a tent on the edge of a mining camp with nothing but a wine-stained corset. and a switchblade tucked behind her knee. Others say she came west with a preacher husband, buried him in the desert, and traded scripture for whiskey and a door that locked from the inside. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But what matters is this. She owns the house now. Not just the building. The business. Every sheet. Every coin. Every secret tucked between the walls like moth-eaten lace. She runs it like a general. Like a queen. Like a woman who remembers exactly how hard it was to get here, and how fast it could all be taken away again. And she's not the only one. There are stories, real ones, about women who clawed their way up from the floorboards, girls who started in rooms with no windows and ended with ledgers in their names. Like Big Nose Kate, who ran her own place in Arizona with such efficiency that the local sheriff deferred to her when a man went missing. Or Belle Brezing in Kentucky, who turned her parlour into such a high-class establishment that it outlived most of the banks. These women didn't just survive, they bent the system. You start to see how it's possible. After the fire, the house is rebuilt, slower than you'd like, but stronger. Claudine adds new locks, heavier beams, 2 secret exits. The parlour is restyled with dark woods and deep purple velvet, richer than before. The regulars return, business comes back, and with it, control. But you've changed too. You're not just another girl waiting for someone to slip a bill into your garter and treat you like something halfway between a secret and a sin. You've learned how to listen, really listen, to the men who come in, the details they drop, the things they don't mean to reveal, land sales, bribes, bank codes, marriages on the rocks. You become a collector of vulnerabilities, and you're not the only one. Clara has learned how to read deeds. Inez has taught herself to forge signatures so clean they fool the banker twice a month. Pearl keeps a small book hidden in the lining of her corset, with notes on every man who's ever walked through the door. Likes, dislikes, patterns, tells. Some of it's nonsense, some of it's insurance. You've all become something more than what the town calls you, and now the power is starting to tilt. It's subtle at first. A man threatens not to pay. He finds himself blacklisted at the saloon, his debts mysteriously called in. A deputy who roughs up one of the girls loses his badge after a letter, anonymous, of course, lands on the mayor's desk with a few too many accurate details. A banker starts visiting the house not for pleasure but for advice. Quiet deals start to happen behind Claudine's closed door. And every time you pass through the hallway you feel the shift under your feet. Not victory exactly, but leverage. And it's not just Claudine who's rising. Clara starts buying small things in her name, a mule, a patch of land. She doesn't tell anyone at first, but you catch her studying tax records by candlelight. Inez makes a side business selling hand-sewn lace collars to the preacher's wife, who knows where they come from but refuses to acknowledge it. And you start managing the money for 2 of the younger girls. Just keeping it safe, they say. But they listen to you now. They ask you what to do next. For the first time, you're not just a body in a room. You're a woman with weight. Of course, it's still dangerous. One wrong move and it all disappears. The law doesn't care how clever you are. A bullet doesn't pause for strategy. Reputation is still a fragile glass teetering on a shelf in an earthquake. But still, something in you steadies. You're not surviving anymore, you're building. Historical fact. While most sex workers in the Wild West faced brutal conditions, a small number rose to prominence as madams and business owners. These women often became some of the wealthiest and most influential figures in their towns. They were still stigmatized, but they held power in real, tangible ways, through land, leverage, and an unspoken network of information. Quirky fact. One notorious madam in Wyoming refused to use banks. Instead, she buried her profits in ceramic jars throughout her garden, using a handmade map drawn in lipstick to track the locations. When she died, no one found the map. Locals still dig around her old property on weekends, hoping for a lucky strike, and the academic debate. Scholars still argue over whether these successful brothel workers were true agents of change, or just exceptions that proved the rule. Did they really have power, or were they just the lucky few allowed to play pretend until a man decided otherwise? You don't have an answer, but you do have a plan. Your floorboard stash is growing. You're reading everything Claudine lets slip. You've memorized the bank's layout. You've got a second name picked out and a story ready if anyone asks. You're not ready to leave, not yet, but when you do, you'll leave as someone they can't forget. The seasons don't change much in Whiskey Gulch. The summer heat fades a little, maybe the wind picks up, Maybe the dust starts to taste more like copper than chalk, but it's not the kind of town where leaves turn gold and everyone gets sentimental. Here, fall arrives with colder mornings, stiffer joints, and clients who drink more before they come upstairs. You feel it in the way the boots hit the floor heavier. You feel it in your bones. But tonight there's something else in the air, and trouble, not the usual kind. The kind with fists or fire. This is worse. This is the slow kind. The kind that starts with a whisper, crawls up the spine of a house, and settles in its roof beams like rot. It starts with a letter, hand-delivered by a boy from the telegraph office, who doesn't quite meet Claudine's eye when he hands it over. He leaves in a hurry, which is never a good sign. You're in the hallway when she opens it. You watch her face. Not fear exactly, but something close, something rare. She folds the letter and says nothing. That night there's a meeting in the parlour, just the girls. Claudine at the head of the room, leaning heavier than usual on her cane. There's talk, she says. You wait. Church folk. County board. Reformers. She spits that last word like it tastes foul. They're trying to shut us down. The silence that follows is sharp and immediate. You hear someone's breath catch, another girl's knuckles crack as she fists the hem of her skirt. You try to keep your own face still. You've heard this threat before. It comes around every few months. Some town official trying to score virtue points, or a preacher whipping his congregation into a froth. But this feels different. They're getting organised, Claudine continues. Petitions, pressure. That fire last month? She nods toward the rebuilt side of the house. They're using it. Saying we're a hazard. Saying we're immoral. You almost laugh. Immoral is a word you only ever hear when someone's hiding something worse. Claudine's voice doesn't shake. We've been here longer than half the damn town. We pay taxes. We keep order. But none of that matters when they think they can cleanse the place with hymns and bricks. Inez raises a hand like she's in school. What happens if they succeed? Claudine doesn't answer for a long moment, then, we scatter. You'd thought it before, what it would look like if the place just stopped. No more parlour lights, no more perfume behind the ears, no more laughter loud enough to hide what happens upstairs. The house has been your world for so long. The thought of it empty feels like the earth folding in on itself. They won't win, Pearl says. Her voice is quiet but steady. We'll fight back. How? Clara asks. With garters and corset laces? That night, no one sleeps. The next day it begins. You go out, dressed not to seduce but to be seen, walking in pairs, smiling at shopkeepers, buying apples, ribbons, ink, not working, existing, letting the town see that you are real, women with names, not shadows with ankles. You talk to the grocer's wife, compliment her jam, offer a piece of advice to the stable boy about his sister's cough. You listen. Pearl bakes pies and gives them away. Inez mends socks for a widow near the chapel. Clara takes a basket of lemons to the schoolhouse and leaves it without a note. And Claudine? She visits the banker, the sheriff, the mayor's wife. No one knows what she says, but the glint in her eye when she comes home is sharper than a stiletto. You know you can't win with threats. That's how they expect you to respond. So you fight with kindness, with poise, with silk gloves and sweet tea, and underneath it all with secrets. Because here's the thing about respectable folks, they have needs. Ugly ones. And this house has always been their mirror. You start leaving reminders, not blackmail, just hints. Notes left in pockets. A perfume-scented glove found in the banker's carriage. A whisper here, a smile there. Enough to make them nervous. Enough to make them hesitate. You remind them what you know. Historical fact. When brothels faced closure by reform movements, madams often fought back with calculated PR campaigns, hosting charity events, supporting public causes, and reminding the town's elite how intertwined their fates really were. Some even kept journals of secrets, to be used only in dire moments. A few of those books ended up in court, others mysteriously vanished. Quirky fact. In one western town, a brothel facing shutdown hosted a virtue ball, an ironic formal dance where guests wore white and toasted to the purity of public memory. Half the town attended. The reformer who led the closure campaign moved out of state within the month. And the debate? Were these women truly protecting their homes, or just manipulating the system for survival? Did kindness and charity from brothels reflect genuine goodwill or calculated strategy? Historians still argue about the motives. Survivors didn't wait for consensus. They did what they had to. Within a week, the letter-writing campaign dies down. The petitions disappear from the shop counters. A preacher is reassigned for health reasons. The mayor makes a public statement about community stability. The brothel remains open, not untouched, not safe, but still standing. And when you lie in bed that night, the train whistling far off again, you realise something new. You're not just part of the house anymore, you're part of the fight. There's a rhythm to brothel life you don't notice until it's disrupted. An invisible current beneath the noise and perfume and velvet, like a heartbeat pulsing under floorboards. Nights blur into each other. The same footsteps on the stairs, the same candlelit faces leaning close, the same gentle knock on the parlour door just before the whiskey glass is empty. Even the chaos has patterns. Fights come in threes. Clients vanish just before payday and return shamefaced. Birthdays are hushed affairs, marked with cheap champagne and dresses borrowed for the evening. But when the newcomers arrive, everything stumbles. 3 of them, all at once. Fresh off the coach from Cheyenne, eyes wide and smiles too big, wearing skirts that are already threadbare and shoes not made for dust. They don't even have stage names yet, still answering to what their mothers called them, still saying please and thank you too much. Claudine brings them in without fanfare. No introductions, just make room and a sharp look at you and Pearl. You feel it immediately. The shift. It's not that you're jealous. Not really. You've been here long enough to know that beauty is temporary, and attention is currency with a short shelf life. But it's hard not to flinch when one of them, Alice, the youngest, sits in your favourite chair and calls it cute. Or when another Tilly complains that the upstairs rooms smell like smoke. You want to say, that smell is a scar, not a stain, but you keep your mouth shut. They don't understand the weight of the house yet. The ghosts in the hallways, the layers of history baked into the walls. They laugh too loudly, too often, as if the world hasn't earned its bitterness yet. You watch them flutter around like butterflies in a room full of hungry cats. Claudine assigns each a mentor. You get Tilly. She's tall, pale, and stares at herself in the mirror more than is probably healthy. Am I supposed to just wait for them to come up to me? She asks on her first night. What if they pick someone else? You want to tell her that sometimes being picked feels more like a curse than a compliment. That attention is a trap when it comes from the wrong man. That survival isn't about who smiles prettiest, but who can keep their mouth shut and their eyes open. But she wouldn't listen yet. So you just say, you'll learn. Pearl takes Alice, who's barely 16 if she's a day, and keeps asking if she can keep her locket on while she works. Pearl doesn't answer, just helps her sew an extra clasp into her corset so it won't fall off. And Inez gets the third one, Dora, who talks about her father like he's still waiting for her to come home. Inez listens without comment, then teaches her how to fold a razor blade into her bodice. The house breathes differently now. Clients love the new girls. Of course they do. Youth is a drug more potent than laudanum. The regulars still come to you, but with less urgency, more familiarity, like they're settling into a habit rather than chasing a thrill. Some stop by just to talk. Some want you to write letters for them. One man, a travelling preacher with soft hands, pays just to sit and listen to you read from a book. You don't mind, not really. You've stopped chasing the highs. You've learned that quiet power is more lasting than pretty chaos. But the new girls don't understand that yet. They compete, whisper behind your back, smile too brightly at your regulars. One night, Tilly tries to slip into your client's lap before you arrive. He's kind about it, gently shoos her away, but the message is clear, she's hungry, and hunger turns girls mean. Pearl says, give it time. The shine wears off fast, she's right. 2 weeks in, Alice cries in the hallway. Her locket got stolen, she swears she took it off for only a second. You find it under the floorboard 2 rooms down, snapped in half. She doesn't ask who did it, but she starts sleeping with her hands balled into fists. Tilly gets sick after her second weekend working alone. Not a fever, something else, something lower. She doesn't understand the symptoms yet, but you do. You hand her a packet of powder and tell her to boil it in tea. She glares at you, then drinks it anyway. Dora cuts her palm open, trying to sharpen a hairpin into a weapon. Inez bandages it and doesn't say I told you so, but you can see it in her face. The house breaks them in fast, that's how it goes. You arrive thinking you're special, that you'll be the one who escapes untouched. And then the job strips you like wind against sandstone, layer by layer until what's left is sharp and small and quiet. You never see the moment it happens, only the after. Historical fact. High turnover was a hallmark of frontier brothels. Many new girls lasted only weeks. Too young, too sick, too scared. Others learned fast, adapted, climbed ranks. But even the most successful carried physical and emotional scars few people saw or believed. The job aged them from the inside out. Quirky fact. Some houses had rituals for breaking in new girls, gifts of perfume, stolen jewellery passed down, or even mock naming ceremonies where old-timers would christen the newcomers with aliases like Rosebud or Velvet just to mark the shift from girl to worker. And the debate. Did older women in brothels exploit the younger ones, or protect them? Some say it was a cycle of cruelty, each generation feeding on the next. Others argue it was the only form of mentorship these women could offer, a brutal but necessary education in survival. You'd like to believe you're helping Tilly, that showing her how to hide a shiv in her shoe or how to smile without promising anything is a kindness. But you know she'll resent you anyway. They always do, in the beginning. Because no one wants to believe that wisdom comes wrapped in bruises. Winter doesn't ask permission when it comes to Whiskey Gulch. It just rolls in one night like an uninvited guest, cold and cruel and full of sharp elbows. The first frost creeps under the doors, curls against your skin, and settles in your lungs with a quiet violence. The girls start wearing their petticoats to bed. Pearl takes to stuffing warm bricks under the blankets, and Clara huddles near the stove like it's the only god worth praying to. And the house, well, it creaks more than usual now. The wind whistles through cracked windows and the pipes groan like old men trying to stand after a long sleep. Claudine orders thicker curtains, has Jonah nail up a few boards, and mutters something about coal being more expensive than gold this year. You all pretend not to notice when the parlour fire starts burning thinner logs and the stew gets stretched with more water than meat. Business slows, as it always does this time of year. Fewer travellers, fewer miners making the trek into town. The ones who do show up come with frostbitten fingers and eyes that have stared too long into white nothing. They want warmth, a body, a whisper that doesn't echo off canyon walls, but they don't bring as much coin. Some nights, you make just enough to cover your tea. Others, you don't make anything at all. The new girls start to panic first. Dora tries to flirt harder, smiling with cracked lips and eyes that won't stop twitching. Tilly argues over fees. Alice retreats into silence, curled in her cot with that broken locket clutched like a rosary. You remember what it feels like to be new and scared and cold in every sense of the word. You try to reassure them. Winter's always lean, you say. We get through it. But the truth is, every winter steals something. Last year it took Violet. Pneumonia, they said, but you know better. It was the cold and the silence and the fact that no one noticed she was sick until she stopped singing at breakfast. She died wrapped in a borrowed shawl with only Claudine and Inez by her bed. No funeral, just a shallow grave behind the barn and a sigh of relief from the town when it was over. You don't want another Violet, so you start doing things, little things. You patch coats, hide boiled eggs in handkerchiefs and leave them under the girls' pillows. You trade your nicest shoes for 2 bags of coal, and when Inez sees you walking barefoot, she gives you hers without a word. Claudine pretends not to notice, but you catch her later, adding 2 extra bills to your envelope. Even the clients change in winter. They talk more. Maybe it's the cold or the loneliness or just the way snow muffles everything except secrets. One man, a fur trapper with fingers like tree branches, spends 2 hours talking about his dead wife and never once asks to be touched. Another just wants to lie under the blankets and pretend someone's waiting for him at home. You learn to listen, to soothe. Not with lies, but with presence. The most valuable thing in this house isn't your body. It's your ability to stay when no one else does. That's something the new girls don't understand yet. They think this job is all about performance. The corsets, the moaning, the painted lips. But Winter strips away the theatre. Winter wants truth. Or at least something that feels like it. One night a man arrives half frozen, bleeding from a cut across his ribs. Says he fell from his horse. You doubt it. He reeks of trouble, but he's shaking so badly you can't bring yourself to turn him away. Clara helps you haul him to the guest room. You clean the wound. Inez boils water. Claudine peers in, says, "One night only," and walks away. He sleeps for 12 hours. When he wakes, he doesn't remember his name. You call him Snow. He stays for 3 days, silent as a ghost, eyes flicking to the window every time someone walks by. You don't ask questions. You feed him, sit with him while he heals. The others think you're foolish. Maybe you are. But when he finally leaves, limping, wrapped in your old shawl, he leaves behind a folded note. I had forgotten what mercy felt like. You don't tell anyone, just tuck it in your book next to the page about the girl in the wall. It feels like they belong beside each other, names no one else remembers, graces no one else saw. Here's your historical fact. Brothels during the winter months often became strange havens for the desperate. Runaways, injured travellers, lost souls with nowhere else to go. Madams had to weigh charity against survival. Some charged discounted rates, others offered beds in exchange for firewood or food. A few turned no one away at all and went under because of it. Quirky fact. In some snowbound towns, brothel girls would knit socks and gloves not just for themselves, but for passing drifters and soldiers. One Wyoming brothel reportedly made more money in winter selling hand-knit goods than in sex work. And the ongoing debate, were brothels in winter more humane or more exploitative? Some historians argue that the cold forced madams to show compassion. Others say the illusion of refuge masked deeper exploitation, that women gave more of themselves for less in the months when the world stopped moving. You're not sure what this winter is doing to you yet, but you know you're different than you were last year. Softer maybe. Harder too. You've stopped asking if this life will end in fire or frost. You just want to make it to spring with all your girls alive. Even the new ones. Especially the new ones. The first real thaw comes without warning. One morning the frost just doesn't show up. No crunch underfoot, no breath fogging in the air, just a wetness in the soil, and a softness to the wind that wasn't there the day before. You wake up and something in your chest feels lighter, looser. It's still cold, sure, but the bite is gone. The windows drip with condensation instead of ice. Pearl opens the parlour door and lets the air in, her arms spread wide like she's welcoming a long-lost friend. Everyone in the house starts acting different, stir-crazy and giddy. Tilly starts wearing her silk robe again, even though it's still too thin for the weather. Dora hums to herself while sweeping. Clara actually laughs, when a mouse darts across the pantry and startles her into dropping a jar of preserves. The glass shatters, but no one scolds her. Instead, you all just watch the red jam ooze across the floor like a bloodstain, and somehow it's the funniest thing you've seen in weeks. That night there's a toast. Not to anything official, no birthdays or anniversaries, no grand announcements, just a simple, quiet toast around the kitchen table. Warm biscuits, cheap whiskey, the kind of laughter that sounds like it's trying to remember how. Claudine clinks her glass against yours and murmurs, "We're still here." And that's it. That's the whole celebration. But it feels like resurrection. Business picks up with the thaw. The roads become passable again. The stagecoach starts rolling into town more than once a week, and with it comes the usual mix of drifters, merchants, lonely widowers, and lost boys playing cowboy. One of the first through the door is a gambler with gold teeth and a voice like gravel. He tries to pay Inez with poker chips. She laughs in his face. Claudine tells him, "Try that again, and we'll take your fingers instead." He leaves, but not before asking if any of the girls have a thing for liars. Turns out most of them do. They just know better now. You spend more time in the parlour again, wearing your better dresses, your perfume, the necklace with the missing clasp that Clara fixed with a bent pin. But there's something different in how you sit now. You don't lean in as fast. Don't try to fill every silence with giggles. You let the men talk themselves into circles, and you watch, and you learn. You've started keeping a second ledger, your own private one. Notes about clients. Not just what they like, but who they know, who they owe, who they fear. You keep it hidden behind the loose floorboard under your cot, wrapped in the lining of an old corset. It's not just gossip, it's leverage. And you've learned, slowly, that leverage is what lets women like you survive the parts of this life no one talks about. Spring doesn't erase everything. The new girls still get bruised, clients still lie. The law still pretends not to see you, but the world feels a little less sharp. Like maybe, just maybe, there's space to breathe. One morning the mail brings a letter addressed to you. No return name, just your first name written in clean script. You open it slow, fingers trembling before you even know why. Inside is a train ticket. Northbound. No note, no explanation. Just that ticket. You sit with it for a long time. Long enough for the morning light to shift across the table. Long enough for Pearl to wander in and ask, "You gonna stare it to death? Or go somewhere?" You laugh, but you don't answer. Because you don't know. You've thought about leaving for so long it's become a kind of mythology. A bedtime story you whisper to yourself when the nights are long and the clients too rough. The dream of somewhere else, of a life where your name isn't whispered in alleyways or tossed across poker tables like a chip. But now that it's real, possible, it feels heavier than you expected. You hide the ticket in your corset that night, not because you're running, but because the weight of it on your skin reminds you that you have options now, that this place doesn't own you, that no one does. Historical fact. Many brothel workers never left. They aged out, died young, or stayed and took up other roles in the house. Laundry, cooking, management. But a quiet few did leave. Some married clients. Some reinvented themselves in towns where no one knew their pasts. A few even bought land and started over under new names. Records of them are scarce, but the evidence lingers in fragments. A woman's name on a land deed, a court document, a library donation. Quirky fact. One former brothel worker in Oregon became a beekeeper. No one knew where she came from until she died, and her journals revealed a decade spent working the circuit in Nevada. She wrote, "The bees never judged me, only stung when I deserved it." And the debate? Was staying in the brothel an act of resignation or of loyalty? Some historians say the ones who stayed behind did so because they had nowhere else to go. Others argue it was a conscious choice, a form of defiance. You made me this and I made it mine. Did they stay because they had to, or because they chose to rewrite what survival looked like? You still don't have an answer. Maybe you never will. But when the wind shifts and the smell of lilacs rolls in through the cracked parlour window, you close your eyes and remember what it felt like the first time you saw this town. Small, mean, full of dust and judgment, but also full of women who refuse to die quietly. You're one of them now, and whether you stay or go, you'll never be just a girl in a house again. You'll be a storm someone remembers.